WCTV, connecting our community.
It being 6 o'clock, I'd like to call the Senior Center Building Committee to order. Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight. Looks like all committee members are present. First item on the agenda, so everybody had the opportunity to review the minutes of the October 6th meeting. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes of October 6th.
Second.
I have a second. Take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you very much. Next item is review of feedback and information provided by that October 6th meeting. Dan?
With regard to all the feedback we got, it's kind of embedded within the presentation tonight. Mr. Chairman, is it all right if we do it concurrently with the presentation?
Absolutely.
Okay.
All right, and that will be with the updates on the site layouts?
Yes, please.
That's been
As we go through each site, at the end of each site, we're gonna go through the comments we received by anybody.
Okay.
We'll walk through it.
All right, to be clear, that was comments that were provided by committee members and anybody else that had provided, just on questions of the site locations that we had picked. All right, Marco, do you want to lead off on that?
Sure. So I'm going to direct everybody to the screen over here, and that's our presentation, which is a constantly evolving document. It's been improved since our last meeting, the November 30th version.
There are some inclusions to comments that were made at the joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen too. So they had asked us to do some things, and they are also included within.
Okay, very good.
Okay?
Okay, I'll get started. Thank you, George. Thank you very much. Thank you for all the committee members and the audience. We'll start off.
Marco, just one question. We're going to be going through this whole thing, you know, that you presented to us. There's a lot in here, and what I was thinking was, just so that everybody could absorb what's going on, as you go through the options, the first options, take a pause and just see if how things are going, and then forward it on after that.
Okay.
The next option, you know?
Okay, certainly.
All right?
Yeah, and I can adjust however people like it. You know, so
Right, as we proceed, I'm sure we can go, especially when we get to the comment sections.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. So this is the essentially the existing conditions, buildable area. Each of the 4 options now has this. This is the Swain School site. I'm sure you're all familiar with it. It's just in front of the town green. The yellow shapes are what we consider to be the buildable area, and we've identified a couple of important items like the 4th of July Committee Building and the Gazelle Senior Center on that site. You can see the aerial view there as well, the parking lot with the southwest corner being, you know, the green area. Option A on the Swain School site has a building that is, you know, has a presence on the town center. Is everybody oriented on this? Everybody sees the town green is a triangular, you know, green space that we have in our site is immediately across Middlesex Avenue. The building footprint is the same on all the options, approximately 18,000 square feet. And each of the options also has a patio area that's shown in red. That'll be a paved outdoor space. And in blue, we have the outdoor activities area. That's a little bit still to be defined, but that's outdoor space. It could be gathering space, it could be pickleball, it could be bocce, different things that we can develop as we start working through schematic design. The parking lot shown in gray. As you can see, the lower area has 115 parking spaces. The plan here is to have that area devoted to the senior center. And I neglected to point out the dashed future expansion area at the end of the building there. So the parking, the building, the expansion, the outdoor space is all are compact in that space. It is a rather tight site. And then upwards from the existing slope is the existing Buzzell Senior Center, and you can see it in gray there. We have two options for the high school parking on the upper part of the site. You can see that the high school parking has a sort of tan colored path that runs down the angled part of the site. And that's to allow, clear, safe passage for folks parking up there and then walking down. And we've aligned that with the crosswalk that is on Middlesex Avenue.
Excuse me, Marco, I see here where the Buzzell is, you kind of have parking over it, so that's to show with or without those additional parking areas?
That's correct. It's a little bit difficult to see because there are two images that are overlapping. We wanted to give you a sense of if the existing senior center, the Buzzell Senior Center, were to remain as a building, as a resource for other purposes, then the parking would be 94 spaces, and that's kind of on the upper left. That whitish rectangle would be the additional parking that you would gain should the Buzzell Center be demolished. So obviously that frees up area on the site, and we could extend the parking by another 34 spots. So you can see the sort of darker gray footprint, that's the Buzzell Senior Center, and without it, you kind of imagine the gray and light gray being all one.
You don't have a pointer, do you? You don't have a laser, do you?
I do not have a pointer, unless this is a pointer.
You want me to point?
Yes.
Yes, please, I would appreciate that.
No problem. So he's talking about, the Buzzell Center's here, and he's talking about if the Buzzell Center was removed either tomorrow or 10 years from now, this would be additional parking that could be laid out in that space.
Dan, why don't I stand up? I don't mind standing up and doing that. I don't want to have to say, Dan, to the left, to the left. I can do that. Thank you. I don't want to be in anybody's way here. So yes, Dan, as you were saying, the Buzzell Center is this darker gray. If it remains, we'd have about 94 parking spaces. If you decide to not reutilize that building, we would gain an additional 34 spaces. So this site, the building in that position, does have a presence on the town center. There are outdoor activities in the current green space, so we're saving these existing trees, and we're dedicating this area of the site to outdoor activities. We do have the high school parking area on an upper lot with a path to a signaled crosswalk. Oh, did you fit? Is this working now?
You need it?
Oh, to advance the slide, of course. I was thinking of the pointer. Okay, so that pathway that I mentioned previously is this tan line that goes to the crosswalk that goes on to the school. The parking, we could do something like, permit parking or dedicated parking just for the high school students up top. We don't want the high school students taking up the senior center parking, so that's a problem we can solve.
That's a problem. That's a problem.
If that's a problem, do we want to
problem.
discuss that now or move on?
Yeah,
Because
move on.
it's a relatively minor problem. If we figure out a solution and implement it, it's maybe through passes or.
No, it's a
I'm
major
sure
problem.
everybody is aware of the parking and what goes on at the high school. So as far as the implications of what you can do to correct that, if that's something you want to get into this early.
Well, right now we're completely two separate parking spaces. They could have two separate entrances. High school parking entry here. The senior center does have these two access points. I'm sort of shooting from the hip here, but a permit, something to identify when people are not parking in the right space, and then the threat of being towed or ticketed or something like that should be a pretty strong deterrent to not parking in the right space.
How many spaces do you currently have for the
I don't have that answer right off the top of my head.
I believe it's 278. I'm not sure. Jeff,
That number is probably 278, 280, yes.
all right, so give or take one or two.
fully utilized?
Well, I've been over there actually in the last month or so, and depending upon the time, there are spaces that are open, so I don't, probably, 70% full, maybe 80% in some cases, but I've not seen instances that I haven't been over there every day, but where it's fully utilized.
Yeah, the majority of the spots are utilized through there. But there are, right, there are some open, but
And they get worse as time goes on, as the kids become 16, that's the junior year.
yeah. and just-
First thing they lose is the class, no more bus.
Okay, good.
Let's see, the last item here, walking paths, which we have on other sites, are not really present here. This is a more urban site, let's call it, it's at the city center. But we do have this nice green resource here to be able to exercise or use, to be outdoors. And, it's obviously, complementing these three spaces that we have already on, adjacent to the building on the site. Before I move on, any questions on this?
Committee members, no.
Okay, I'll move on. Option B, we've turned the building so that the entrance is facing northeast. Again, we show the building footprint, 18,000 square feet. The red square is the paved asphalt area. Outdoor activities are always about the same size on all the layouts. As usual, we have our future expansion space. Let's see, we have parking up above with the same concept that we discussed about keeping or not keeping the Buzeau Senior Center, and increasing or not increasing, maximizing, let's say, the high school parking at the upper portion of the lot, of the site. We still have the connecting pathway. The building's just oriented differently. We have the outdoor spaces that are still southwest facing. In this particular case, you would come through, you'd loop around, you'd have your drop-off, covered entry. We do have service courts now. Access to the three sides of the building. Parts of those access will be paved. Some parts we might want to keep green, but have the substructure under the turf that's strong enough to support a fire engine or to support occasional traffic. So that's what we would do here to be able to access different parts of the site. You'll see that on different versions.
So when it comes School Street to Middlesex Ave, Middlesex Ave is a pretty busy road. So what, I see this, the outdoor activity part being right out that corner. Unless there's something built that, like a fencing type thing, or, I do see that as a hazard, and also as a space that seniors, or participants might not feel comfortable as in going out because they're being constantly observed.
I agree with that assessment, except there are things that we can do to mitigate. There's some, screening with either vegetative screening or maybe some fencing, a combination of the two. Unfortunately, this site has those limitations. It's tight on space. So as you can see on all these options, we pretty much have filled in as much of the building area on the green as we can, and then the rest of it becomes parking. We shied away from parking in areas where we saw evidence of some ledge or subsurface intrusion. So that's to be determined in the future. But this is the tightest of all the sites, and the outdoor space is really, we can always fit the building on there in the right orientation. But true, we have busy streets on two sides of our site.
Any other questions?
I would just agree with what, and echo what Terry said with regard to, especially the outdoor space, for the seniors. I think that, having it in the front there, school's gonna be getting out, cars are gonna be coming by. Middlesex is a busy avenue there. I don't see this as conducive at all, and the plan itself is not pleasing to me at all.
Yeah, I would have to agree. Again, it's a busy intersection. We recognize that. We're working with what we have. It's not optimal, but we're doing the best that, we did the best that
Well,
we
we're
could
doing
with what we
options,
have.
we're doing options, I agree.
Now, we do have a third option that is different from the other two, and option C you haven't seen before. The building is placed away from the street to maintain the open space for civic activities like the farmer's market or fireworks or fairs. We understand, and this is actually very similar to the configuration that you have now. Excuse me, I'll point out some of the usual features. The upper parking for high school is pretty much unchanged with that path. We have the building footprint, the patio, and the outdoor activity areas, but in this case, they've been pushed towards the sloped area that's in between the lower and upper site. So these are still separate, but over here now you can come in, drop off, park. You can enjoy the outdoor space, and see, we didn't put islands for water detention or anything in between the parking to try to leave as open a paved area as possible to allow for, the farmer's market, vendors, fairs, things of that sort. This layout is more similar to what you currently have. We tried to in all the options we preserved this corner because of course we have a really magnificent tree here, a couple other existing trees that we want to try to save. So that's the reason why that green space is preserved on all three options. But contrary to the other two, instead of trying to locate the building here, we just pushed it back. It's going to have a slope on the rear end of the building, but we are able to create an outdoor patio space, and we do still have our outdoor activity space. So, here, I'll come back over to here. So the outdoor patio space is protected from traffic noises, behind the building. So that's in line with what I was saying before about, responding to the first two options that we have. We tried to incorporate those comments, and we developed this option here. Yeah, it's actually going to be the next slide.
Well, one of the things I have to also, looking at all three of these, your lower parking lot, you do not pick up a lot of parking spots. The original has 94, and I know when Terry has a lot of her events, parking is at a premium. So by doing this, and you're only adding 11 down below, so that's not really relieving any of that at all.
No, not the parking necessarily, but
Yeah.
we did try to address other issues which are sticking
Understandable.
points.
Jeff, did you have a question?
So look in the far right of that screen where it references the outdoor activity area, and it looks like that black box is potential expansion. Is that the same area that you had referenced on a previous slide that was an area of ledge?
It is. So, in the event that a future addition to the community center, senior center happens, yeah, there might have to be some adjustments that happen there. We're trying to stay away from that corner, but if the condition is a little bit unknown, I think we would, there is some evidence there, but we did not feel at this time confident just, ignoring the topography and signs and doing some, suggesting something that might not be easy or might not be obtainable, let's say.
Town hall there.
So, there are some drawbacks on this option, but there were also advantages that I think make improvements over the previous two options that we looked at. Any questions on this option?
Dan, don't be afraid to speak up.
No, I have to what everyone else is saying, it's tight, there's no way around it.
Yeah, so these are the three that we developed for, yeah, exactly. This is tight. It's a tight site. It's nice because it's, the center of the town. It's the sort of symbolic, it's the, people, I think, orient towards this space as being Wilmington, the town center. But to build a building here without, digging way into that hillside or having to, it's a challenging site, mostly because of the size and because it's, on two different levels. For a senior center, that's not conducive. So,
My concern, sorry. My concern is after building such a wonderful building, that will the use really be able to be fully used without the amount of parking to be able to get people indoors. So that's kind of.
that's a challenge,
That's
for sure. So what I can do is go through these questions and then back up if we want to go back and look.
No, I think you could go to the question, see what we looked at, it's kind of what we referenced.
Okay. So these first two general comments are going to appear on all the options. So the first one is Chief Kavanaugh. The comment was Chief Kavanaugh should weigh in on access around the building as it appears from diagrams on page 1 and 2 that fire personnel would only have access on 2 sides. And we've tweaked the layouts that we have so that there's a curb cut. In many cases, there'll be a certain stretch of paved area where we could also access a dumpster or, and I want to make sure everybody understands that you can have grass, a turf area that has a substructure that you can drive a heavy vehicle on. And it holds the weight, and if it happens in case of an emergency, you really want that to happen. So in all the sites that we have now, that is possible. Now, there are some cases where maybe the positioning of the building doesn't allow it 100%, but we have made an attempt to address this comment on all the sites. I'll read the response. Chief Kavanaugh has provided preliminary feedback on site access. Site designs will provide fire apparatus access to 3 sides of the proposed building. The design team has made adjustments to the site plans to reflect the chief's comments. So I believe you'll see that on most on the layouts. There might be 1 or 2 that might need to be tweaked, but we would do that during the design development phase if we proceeded with that site. The other comment here, general, is that for this and all options, a graphic scale should be shown, and we do have a graphic scale on the drawings. Comment specific to the Swain School site. I'm just going to read this. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. This site plan and all the others under review do not show a service road around the building for deliveries. As discussed at previous meetings, the kitchen is to be in the back, at the back. Also need to make provisions for the monthly drive-through events. In addition, need to provide for fire and emergency vehicle access, typically 20 feet wide, which could also be the same as service road. Showing these roads is important even in this preliminary phase because they could affect setbacks from the property and location of parking areas. And our response is delivery, fire, and emergency vehicle service roads, drive-through accommodations, rear kitchen location will be incorporated into the site designs. Better to do that. Item S1.2, outdoor activities and patio are a bad location too close to Middlesex Avenue. We discussed that already. Noted. Outdoor activities in the patio would be in the current location of the green area at the southeast corner of the site. The tight site doesn't permit a different layout for this option. Now, in option, the Swain School option A, that A and B, that happens, and that's what we did. This site and sharing parking with high school parking will create too much traffic for seniors. And this again about option A, that was the first one that we looked at. Student parking would be separated from the senior center with its own entrance near to the Buzzell Senior Center. And there will be challenges there, but I'm confident that we can find good solutions. The building should face Middlesex Avenue. The building would have a close proximity and formal presence on Middlesex Avenue, but the building entry is in front of the parking lot. So part of the building is facing the town green, but it's not the side of the building that you enter because you can't park in the back and then walk around to the front. So we'll make a gesture, monumental gesture, some kind of gesture toward the town green to signal this is a public building, this is an important building, that sort of thing. But the entrance is going to be on the other side. So should face Middlesex Avenue. The building would have a close proximity. I already read that. So any questions on any of these comments and responses?
Any questions on the comments?
Point out on that last point you made, and that is currently the circumstance of the Wilmington Memorial Library. It doesn't really front faces Middlesex, but as a practical matter, the parking is on the back and the side, and that's how people enter the building. So.
Yeah, the alternative would be to put the building in the back and the parking in the front. But we had that condition on part of the site, but we'd like to make sure that our new senior center, if it's on this site, it needs to have presence on Middlesex Avenue and on the town green. Is this a good speed to go?
Yeah,
Slow
go
down,
for it.
speed
Yeah,
up?
go to the next one.
All right.
Move on.
A couple more on option A and B, kind of mixed up there. No walking trails available. This is an in-town site where the town green can provide area for outdoor exercise or activities. That's a resource that we can use. Obviously, it's not ideal, but we've already discussed the nature of the urban site in town. All right, this next one is for option B. In general, this location for a senior center is too busy. Discussed that. I think we've already gone over that. Next option, place building further back. Option A. So that's why we developed option C. That's the one where the building was pushed back towards the slope and it had a retaining wall that would include that outdoor patio space. So we were addressing that comment by coming up with this alternate option C. Outdoor space too close to the road, Middlesex Avenue, especially if there's an activity happening. I'm just referring us back up to that same comment as before. A couple of the questions were similar, but we wanted to make sure that we included them. It's the site that we have. That area is the green area that we want to preserve because it has those nice existing trees. We can do things to mitigate, but clearly the proximity to that intersection is an issue. Remember, at 2 p.m., students are dismissed from school, and it is already a safety issue. This would even have more concerns with the placement of the building so close to the actual traffic. Safety issues will be addressed. The proposed senior center building is approximately the same distance as adjacent houses on Middlesex Avenue. We just want to point out that we're not right on the sidewalk. We're pulled back a little bit, but point taken. It's the site has those issues. Really no way to get around it. It is human nature to park close to where you want to go. Do you think the students would park on the hill with other parking so close?
No.
You kidding me?
That's a joke.
So,
Real
question,
joke.
yeah, that's another issue. We'll have to take care of that as well.
Move on.
Discuss potential options. Is it resolvable? Yeah. Is it optimum? No. Any question on these comments and responses?
No.
No, I think we're good. I noticed that, some of them are a little, site selection is one thing, building configurations, and that'll come after site selection.
That's right. So we tried to make a gesture towards like what the building might be.
Right.
We did orient.
We're in good position to cut this.
Okay.
Yes.
So I have a motion to remove the Swain School site from the Senior Center Building Committee.
Who seconded it?
And it was
Teresa.
seconded.
Teresa.
Discussion.
Yeah, that's why I was going for discussion.
Discussion, if I may. Thank
Go
you
ahead.
very much. Thank you, Teresa, for a
Absolutely.
second. Mr. Chairman, I think based on the information that we've been provided, especially the diagrams, And I appreciate the three different layouts, but it's my personal feeling that none of them seem to work, and I think that's shared by some of the members of the committee. And I think that I alluded to that at last month's meeting, and I think based on what we've seen now with the visuals, some of the commentary that we've given, some of the discussions that we have, similar to what we did with the Whitfield School, I think it's appropriate at this time to move forward and focus on the next two sites, and we could, I think, in my opinion, it's time to eliminate this site.
Right, some of the criteria that we're going to be looking at that I feel is most important, like we talked about parking and a few other concerns that are in there, so I would tend to agree with you on that. Any other discussion?
I would just like to say that, to me, one of the things that I've been holding of utmost importance from the very beginning of this is outdoor space.
Yes.
And that means space that we can spread out, we can add, we can do whatever the population wants to do.
Right.
If we were in a more urban environment, I think any one of these three presentations would be ideal, because we would only expect that. So we have two other great sites with a lot of land.
Right.
And I do appreciate, I think you did a great job in putting three things together so nicely, but it all comes down, like you said, to the space limitations for me.
Absolutely. Future expansion, having the area to put walking trails, or,
Exactly.
and again, future growth. That's exactly what we're looking for.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, the visuals really help me, and I'll only speak for myself. The visuals really help because, you've identified a couple different spots at the location, and when you originally said to me, Swain Green site, right? That leaves it up to my imagination on where on the site it might be, right? So for this, now I can actually visualize it, and for me, I can kind of come to the conclusion that none of those are going to work based on the space that we use in this community for multiple reasons, and we've listed them. I won't repeat them, but we can all think of about 10 things off the top of our head that could be utilized throughout the calendar year. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Any further discussion?
Just one more. I think for the investment that the town is going to make in this particular building, that this site is not a site that would be feasible and accommodate from what I have seen in the last couple of years going on at the senior center. You did a fantastic job in visually pointing that out. And I think, as Greg said, when you just mention a site, everybody can have a different picture of what that looks like. But you, as the professional, and why we hired you, is to tell us some of the pros and the cons of each of these options that are available to us. So thank you, Marco. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? All right, hearing nothing else, I'll put this to a vote. All in favor of removing the Swain School site from this plan, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That was unanimous. So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, shall we move on?
Please do.
So now we're going to talk about the Glen Road existing town hall site, the building that we're in. You all recognize the building and the ball fields. The original site that we were looking at included the ball fields, but we had abstained from spreading out into the ball field because we identified that as a resource that we didn't want to just take over a portion of. And then eventually, through conversation, we do have another option that'll be coming up. That is not this option. This is the option where we're only using this buildable area here that's in yellow. We're maintaining the existing playground, the existing pickleball courts, of course the Cushing Field and the field house. The green space there is the Pine Grove, which is a very nice asset to have there. Obviously, we have the existing town hall on the site. We did note there's an underground storage tank there, although I don't know that that had any impact on our designs. Of course, we have Harnden Street and Glen Road. That's a busy intersection, but I think this is going to be one of the. Any questions on the existing conditions? So here we go on option. I'm going to identify some of the items on the plan. So we've dashed in the existing town hall building so that people understand how we're working around it. We'd like to attempt to have the existing town hall function as long as it can until we're ready to do something else. We do have, as you come down, the parking lot is in front of you. The parking is intended to serve, if I move this, I just want to kick it and knock something over.
I've had that feeling in here before.
I already moved the chair, otherwise I'd be on my back. Let's see here. So the existing town hall is dashed in. We have the parking. The parking is intended to serve the senior center as well as the ball fields and the playground area and the pickleball courts. In this case, we push the building up against that portion of the site. It's the northwest portion of the site. And we have the usual suspects, the building footprint, the paved patio, the outdoor activity, future expansion. Now, the future expansion is within the outdoor activities box, but there's still lots of room behind the building. We could also perhaps expand into the Pine Grove area. We do have a drop-off, and this is where I was intending. We have service here, but we could extend it using that system, subsurface system. Same thing over here. We would just use a paving that could support. Paving comes in different types. There's the kind that's just for pedestrian use, but there's also we could do a heavier duty paving and indicate that for emergency vehicles should they need to do access the building.
261 spaces.
Yep, 261 parking spaces. Building placed to maximize parking and access to outdoor activities. We didn't put the building in the middle and the parking around it. We pushed the building over and maximized the parking. Ball fields remain untouched, so we still have, when there are activities out here, this is very similar to the parking you have now, just all facing the field and joint use. Vegetated parking islands can reduce or eliminate subsurface stormwater detention. What that means is these green stripes in between the parking aisles can be, water can be directed towards them, and then we could have, surface water detention, which saves money rather than having to put it underground water detention. We did have this collector path that aligns with the entrance, so if somebody's over here, they might prefer to go to the path and then use the path rather than walking in traffic. We tried to do that on all our options. Layout is dependent on the demolition of the existing town hall. That's obviously a big point that we've discussed in the past. I don't know if we need to discuss that now, but let me continue. Outdoor activities expand into the existing Pine Grove. Very nice resource to use. Patio is protected from the parking lot behind the building. And as I pointed out, there's already a lot of green, there are already a lot of pathways, we could totally take advantage of all those. And even, there's a lot of areas still back there to use. So we feel pretty confident. This does not have the same restrictions that the Swain School site has, right? We have, even though we're sharing with the ball fields, we've got a nice facility there with room to grow and room to, private areas. It's not on a busy street.
And you have trailheads right out back there, so
That's
you
right.
could,
We take full advantage of those, including, I think I parked in front of it just now. There's a trail from, what's the name of that street here?
Garden.
Garden, I think.
Garden.
Yeah, so it seems like there's some kind of path there. I mean, we didn't know it was there until just recently, but yeah, we could take advantage of the cranberry trails and all that.
Greg, do you have a question?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Through you, Marco, if I could ask a question to you, and you may not know the answer, but because I'm not familiar with the state formula in terms of the ratio of handicap parking spaces to what we have here, I wonder if you could speak to.
It's usually 2%. So if you have up to 100, you need 2. It's a, excuse me. It's a, I got a cough. Excuse me. It's written up in the 521 CMR. John, do you have that on the top of your head?
There's a requirement for it, but usually on senior centers we provide more.
I was gonna say, you can do more. It's just for every 3 spaces, you're gonna have 2
Thank you, gentlemen. And so at the 261, we're looking at a fair amount, plus you're talking about additional on top of the requirement.
Yeah, so what we would try to do is, maximize what we can get right in front of the building, so you don't have to cross any roads. It could be that we could use some of these. It could be that we use the closest spaces to the building. We'll have to have crosswalks, but
I think there's 6 shown
I
on
thought I
that,
showed that.
on that one there, but it could be 8, we could go to 8. There's all of the heads of the islands there, where they tee up like this. All of those spaces across there could also be accessible, typically.
So I'm sorry, sir. So that you're saying it's shown on the map?
No, they're not currently shown as accessible, but they could be converted to them pretty easily.
And there would be a drop-off area in the front, so you'd be able to swing through.
yes, there would be.
I'm John Hammer, I'm from SLR, I'm working with the project team. So what I'm getting at is these spaces that are along here.
Do you want the ruler?
Oh, yeah, that's nice. So we could use these spaces, we've done this before in others.
Like they do at Market Basket.
Sorry?
Like they do at Market Basket.
Yeah.
Correct, yeah.
And it just depends on how the front of these work out, but these are always prime real estate. Any center with parking, that's a common thing. So.
Yeah, and there would be others over by the playground and the ball field. So a lot of that. I don't want to push it off, but a lot of that gets vetted out during the schematic design process. This is sort of the 30,000-foot view you're looking. That's sort of more of a schematic design level addition. But with all these spaces, I do believe that we would have more than what we would need by code, and that would be mostly to accommodate our use group. Perhaps you could go fewer than what we have here over on this area in front of the ball fields, but we'd have to have some there as well.
Right. So you feel there'd be more than enough spaces here to accommodate anything going on in the sports field and also with the senior center?
Yes, we believe so. Now,
That's 200, that's a lot of spots,
Yeah, right, right, right,
So the parking,
More than double we had at the swing.
Yeah.
right. Well, yeah, but I think you,
Go ahead, Greg.
Question, if I could, a follow-up on this diagram, 261 estimated spots, and I'm glad to hear that there'd be more than the required 6 handicap. Marco, our friend here, do you have a guesstimation, estimation of the number of parking spaces that would be available while the town hall was still there temporarily at that site?
so, a functioning town hall that's so close to the entry is going to be tough. For short periods of time, we could do that. We could conceivably, hold off on some of the final construction right up front, and you'll see that come up again.
Yeah, I ask it because obviously with this proposal that the senior center is built and the town hall exists there for a short time, I don't want to dare to guess how long, but for a period of time, there would be shared parking. I just wonder how much of the 261, I would imagine it's quite a bit, but, is it half, is it 2/3?
I'm sorry, could you please restate the question?
Yeah, I'm sorry, but let me clarify. So, if I'm reading this correctly, under this proposal, the senior center would be built at that location, the town hall would remain while that's built until it's finished, and then this would be.
I don't know that we actually got into the scheduling and phasing of that work. I mean, clearly, they cannot function together on site at the same time, but
No.
that to us was getting into town politics that are kind of out, a little
108.
bit outside of our
All
purview.
right, so 108?
108.
Okay, so there'll still be 108, and let me just back up, because I thought that's what we discussed at the last meeting, that, let me just make it much clearer, my question. I'll walk it back a bit. In your opinion, Marco, we can, and I think you told us this last time, we can build that senior center at that location there, and this town hall can remain intact. Now, not forever, but it could be built, is that correct?
I would not advise it because I don't know that that's, let's see, at this scale, we could have a 30-foot separation. There's a fire separation distance, so there are some techniques that we
Marco,
have to.
before you go any further, Dan.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to answer that if I can, because we do this all the time with schools. So the answer is yes.
Yes.
The parking layout might be temporary for a while, the islands might not be constructed, the traffic patterns might be different, things like that as a part of a phasing plan. But I don't see why you would not be able to completely build the senior center here and have the functioning town hall.
For a brief
At the-
period,
When I mean brief, not years, you know.
Well, I mean, we did it in 2014 in this community where we
Right,
had
for the high school.
modules.
That's
The
exactly what we did at
students
the high
school was Built
school.
on the same location.
Yeah.
Thank you, thank you for that.
Terry?
So in saying that, so you're saying that a functioning senior center and a functioning town hall, both working at the same time on our property?
This
it's not gonna
diagram
happen.
only identifies where the existing town hall is.
Right.
It doesn't address how long, when it gets removed.
Right.
It doesn't, it really, this layout works works at its best when the town hall is removed and that area becomes free.
Right,
And the
exactly.
senior center
Right.
functions normally.
Right,
Yeah.
Just
absolutely.
making sure.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, we were not, I mean, that's why, dashed means demolished, basically, or,
Right.
future work, or.
We
So-
would be in schematic design, would do phasing drawings of each phase.
Yeah.
Demonstrating it can be done, but I can tell you, just based on 30 years of doing this, it can be done.
Yeah, yeah, well,
It
anything
can be done. It's just a question of how long, and
Well,
it's not ideal, but
Yeah.
it can be done.
Thank you.
But I want to be clear that all three of the options that we're about to show, the existing town hall is dashed, but the intent is for it to eventually move away, not be there. These options are really for the senior center and not for
That's a
a
different topic.
co-mingled site. We do have some options to look at that do show town hall and senior center on this site. However, we have taken up 2 of the baseball fields. So those are coming up, I believe, after this option. So-
I know you, I want to get into something else also. Another question. I know you're doing roads, the traffic study.
That's right.
So thinking about the traffic on Glen Road, in some ways that we could mitigate that, maybe either with four-way stop signs or something, so.
So the traffic study is about 6 weeks from completion.
Okay.
And we expect recommendations on what we can do on Glen Road. And the recommendations are easier since it's a town road,
Right.
as opposed to the other locations where they are state highways and you have to go through Mass DOT.
Right, okay.
Oh, sorry,
Okay.
just a point of clarification, the 60% done, you said it's anticipated when? 6 weeks.
Oh, I said 6 weeks.
6
It
weeks.
started. They said they would be finished in about 6
It's a
weeks.
traffic study. I just wanted, the concern of pulling and pulling out, as far as.
Yeah, yeah.
Obviously, if it comes in earlier, we'll bring it earlier. We're not going to wait 6 weeks.
Can I make a comment, since we're talking about moving in and out of the site, on Harding Street, I noticed driving down that street that there's fencing pretty close to the property, so I'm assuming there's no room for us to expand width-wise. Is that correct? Does anybody know that?
Is that private property, basically?
I'm sensing, since it looks like they're private fences that are what would be on the
Sure.
property line.
Final instrument survey will determine that, but I think you're correct.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
these red lines here should approximate the property lines, that we transferred them from graphics that we got from the town. I believe they reflect the property lines, it's tight there.
yeah. And Marco, just to reiterate one more time, and you've said it over and over again, that this particular drawing and a couple of the others is all based on the premise of the town hall not being there, being demolished. Therefore, I'm going to ask something to make sure that I'm understanding this correctly. That being the case, in order to build this building, although it can be built with the town hall there, and it would be very, very, very difficult. Let's not put blinders on. There would be a lot of disruption. Then the town hall, in order, would probably be built first. And it would take the senior center back, time-wise, to be built. Because if you're gonna demolish the existing town hall, you have to have some place for those people to go. And that decision has to be made. So therefore, and I know that, you know, anything is possible, but in the construction world and in the real world of construction, I do not put this plan equal with the high school plan. And I see a gentleman to my left who's been on this committee almost 30 years, and he's nodding. And they aren't comparable in any way. There was no disruption to the original high school at all. This is entirely different. This means machinery is going to be put in there. This means that equipment, as well as supplies, as well as preliminary fencing. It may even disrupt people trying to get to the fields. For whatever shortage of time. But my strong feeling is that the understanding has to be that the existing town hall goes first.
I don't think
And
that
that-
necessarily.
Can I
don't think
speak to that?
necessarily is the case. With all due respect, I don't believe that it's a absolute that if this site is used, that the senior center has to be second place. I think, first of all, in terms of the high school, there was disruption because if you recall, in order to create the space, the gymnasium was taken down. There was special area for students to go through
Entire
to
parking
get out
lot
to
was
the
gone.
back fields. So there was clearly disruption in the high school scenario. And there's no question that, you know, for a stretch of time, there would be some measure of disruption in this circumstance. But I don't think it's a, you know, this possibility here is dead on arrival, so to speak.
May I
Good.
just, Diane, I think, you know, looking at it, the way you're looking at it, you're correct. But if the town hall's approved and it's on its way, there is absolutely no reason why this cannot be constructed while the existing town hall is here and be phased around. None whatsoever. And it will not be cost prohibitive. There is a tremendous amount of space on this site to provide lay-down areas, to provide safe corridors to get to the fields. I don't think that should be a cause for concern. If the town hall was not approved, and this was approved, I wouldn't recommend building this here. So that's it goes back to my comment to Greg. Years doesn't work. You know, months and maybe. I mean, the town hall's going to be months behind. If they're voted close together, they'll be months behind each other. I think I certainly don't see that as being insurmountable by any stretch of the imagination.
Well, knowing what the usage is of the fields there, and it isn't only Pop Warner, we have 3 other types of organizations that use that field there. We have cricket, believe it or not. We have the middle school baseball, and we have the middle school, I think it's soccer, I found out from the recreation department. There is going to be disruption. There is definitely. Now, granted, I can't say how long. All I know is when we do projects like this, it is hard to predict a, quote, unforeseen condition. And I've been on boards where those unforeseen conditions do come up, no matter how well planned things are. But again, my opinion as a member of the board, I'm only stating what I feel is best.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you just look at the first page of the Glen Road site where it shows the buildable area, it shows the amount of area that's currently here for parking, which currently basically is squeezed in during events, big events with sports and town hall. It's not as large as we're providing as we're moving forward. I think it can, that amount of space can easily be accommodated in phasing. I really do. I wouldn't be standing here saying that we could do it if we couldn't do it. I'd be arguing against it, but I think it's possible. I really do.
Okay. Okay.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And although I completely can appreciate my friend and colleague, Ms. Allen's perspective, and she knows I greatly respect her opinion, I do tend to disagree in the fact that, tonight, my understanding is that we are here as an exercise to consider all the options. When I look at this option, I see this as a favorable option for the senior center, and as somebody who supported both projects at town meeting, I want to be respectful of town meeting's wishes, but I see the sequencing of this particular option in the favor of the senior center. This would go first here, but it would also almost guarantee that the town hall would have to be addressed immediately, which would also address the wishes of town meeting. But I, as a member of this committee, prefer the sequencing of this option. And again, I know we're here just to consider the different options, and I just wanted to add that comment that I'm glad that our OPM has confirmed that it can be done, and I won't question for a second that there would be disruption. There's no question there would be for a time, but I look at the long-term benefit of this particular site, and I'm definitely intrigued, and I'll, I like some opportunity to maybe comment later, but
I will also, Paul.
If you're looking for a vote on a site tonight, you would be hard pressed to get a yes vote out of me for any site that doesn't work independently of any other project that's going on in town. That's my bottom line. We're going to go and we're trying to get funding for this project. We're going to try and get funding for a town hall and eventually funding for a Wildwood School or a replacement or whatever is going to happen with the whole school side of things. I'd hate to hang my hat on a project that relies on another project passing a town meeting for that's well.
I would just maybe
can I say
address the
one
manager
thing
to
just
clarify.
for that, just for the opportunity? We have one opportunity to do this here. That's what we're doing as a community. We're not, it's not pros and cons, who's doing what, us versus them. We have the opportunity here to build this and build it right. I don't want to misstep and put it someplace just because of speculation of something else that may happen. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to put it in someplace that we're going to restrict our growth and wish we had something a little better, but we did it because of this. So we work together and we get through this. We can get this thing done correctly. So I'm saying, I was looking at this and I originally, and I spoke to Diane, and looking at one of the other sites, they said, well, where it's not impacted by anything else, yeah, you know what? I originally liked this site, looking at it, if this became available for the growth and that, but where it's impacted by something else, I'm like, all right, I might change my mind and go this way, just to get it done, just to give us something that we want here in town, something we need, right? But if we have the opportunity to build it and build it right, why wouldn't we do it that way? We can work together and we can get this completed. Sorry for that, but just want to get it out. Teresa.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So in my mind, the sequencing of construction, assuming that both projects are approved and we want to put the senior center at this site, in my mind, both projects are being built, maybe in different stages of construction, but we wouldn't wait to complete the senior center and then start digging ground on a new town hall. I'm assuming that we would be doing work on that project as well, so that the time spent together would be shortened considerably. And as far as impacting the fields, I'm just thinking about all the money that this town has spent on turf fields. at the high school and at Yentl Farms. And we should be able to utilize those fields. We paid to have them there to be used 24 hours a day. And why can we not just say, listen, temporarily, we need to move some of this activity to Yentl Park? So,
Yeah, it can
I
be
mean,
done.
there were options to get around some of the obstructions that we're seeing when we look at this.
And let me say, Teresa, I would agree with you, and that is a good point to make. But when you stand up at town hall and you're going to say, we are temporarily going to have to close these fields for a short period of time, I'm not so sure that, other than the seniors here, that isn't going to be packed with people that have children that utilize those fields. And if, as we go along in this presentation, if we have some other options that come up without having any of those issues involved, okay, it would help to pass the article and not disturb or have any groups oppose it on something that's going to be taken away from them as a taxpayer of the town.
Right, well,
But even though it's a short period of time, and I understand what you're saying, but that would be a tough sell, in my opinion, on town meeting floor.
well, my point was to create a relief valve for the use of those fields, not to completely shut them down, just to be able to say, all right, we used to work at 100% capacity, maybe during construction we can only do 60%, and we'll find another home for the other 40% of the activity. That's all I meant.
I firmly believe you will not need, and I firmly believe you will not need to close the fields with the option, because the amount of parking you're adding here. So you're clearing a lot of space here that's not currently cleared to create option A and option B. When you see option B, it'll become even more clearer at how much space you're clearing. And I think for the purposes of going through all these, I think we just have to assume that the town hall is eventually coming down, and not get into if the town hall stays or the town hall doesn't stay, because clearly you can't build it if the town hall stays. None of these options, you can't. If the town hall doesn't go forward, these options are dead in the water. If the town hall goes forward, these options have viability.
Sure.
So again, I think we go back to, my concern is we go back to Paul's statement in saying that here we are laying out a plan that may not be able to happen because the town hall will still be there. And it's very concerning that we're saying if one works or if something else doesn't work, it's all contingency on one on the other, and it really shouldn't be that way if there is another piece of, these layouts.
But I
We
think
go back to the matrix that we did in the very beginning, and that we went through, and that we spent all this time on that matrix as to what were the three top properties. And this property was, I believe,
Number 3.
the third property.
And I think one of the criterion, and I don't remember off the top of my head, was because there was a building in the way. So, so the matrix did what it was supposed to do. But the options that we're showing you are showing you as if the building is not there. So, I mean, I know it's hard to do, but you have to place yourself in a third dimension and assume this building is not here. If this building was not here, this layout gives you 61 spaces, probably 255 when you add Greg's extra handicap spaces.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, I think you've got a tremendous amount of parking, and you'll never have a problem with parking here.
And
But I understand, and I'm not adverse to the fact that there's a big thing in the middle, and it's the town hall. So we're asking you to think about it as if it's not here.
And quite frankly, I believe that these projects, the town hall, school administration building, and the senior center, there is value in linkage, and I know that scares people, but this building in 1984 was intended to be the temporary town hall, and we're, temporary, I guess, is a relative term, but this building and the Roman house are not appropriate places for administrative services. The Roman
Right.
house is a house. It was never intended to be a administrative building, has no handicapped access for staff or parents that are trying to access the building. This building has its own issues in terms of access, a lack of space. We are maxed out here. Certainly the senior center, there's no question, the senior center needs to be addressed, and it needs to be addressed soon. But I think there is an equally compelling case to be made for a town administration building, town school, and it's my belief that there are a lot of positives to having these projects connected, and in terms of trying to get them approved.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A lot of good points have been made, and I just want to go back to this particular site, since this is the one we're discussing. I've mentioned before, I'm in no position in leadership when it comes to Pop Warner. I'm merely just one of the parents, and I don't want to speak for Pop Warner at all. Having talked to quite a few folks in Pop Warner, obviously, just like everybody in this room, very reasonable, all taxpayers, and they've indicated on a number of occasions, as long as they have a place to play, they're happy. And they also indicated to me, and just as just some feedback again that I've gotten from the Pop Warner folks, is that that they are open to the idea of a senior center at this location because the timing of the two activities don't conflict as much, as a meeting in the evening and a practice in the evening, where most of the senior activities take place during the day. The Pop Warner and Little League, as you correctly pointed out there, Pop Warner is not the only activity that takes place, but that's after school in the evening for the majority of the time, maybe the exception of maybe the summer. So they like that because of, like myself, I found myself parking on Garden Ave a few times to come to my daughter's practices, but I think we've all been there. Some probably are parked up on the grass tonight, but so they were open to that. Again, I'm not in a position to speak for everybody about Pop Warner, but just talking to some of the folks there, I wanted to make sure I made that clear. And again, the biggest point that they made was that they're happy to, they just want a place to play.
But let me just say that I spoke with Karen Campbell in the Recreation Department, and I asked her opinion about the 4 leagues that play there. She said it would be devastating. And she said, I hope that does not happen. That would be devastating for me to move those things around. So I know and I'm not saying that what you're saying is not true, and I believe what you're saying. I can only say that the person that has to implement these programs, I personally spoke with her and asked her if there was disruption to this, if these fields in somehow or other were taken small or whatever, and she said that would be devastating. And those were her words to me.
To be clear, though, was the question posed if all the fields were taken out of circulation, or if some of the fields? Because I think it's important to, if she was responding on the premise that all the fields were taken out of circulation, I can understand where she might say that, but I don't think we're contemplating, at least in this scenario, taking all the fields out of circulation.
Well, just the temporary, even we're talking temporary, while construction site starts moving on, and yeah, maybe something might open at Yentiles, and hopefully maybe you people, get some text on property, I don't know, or whatever, to put the fields. All I'm saying is, that was her response to me. Now, I did not say that we would be taking all the fields. I just said if there had to be interruptions in those programs, she said that it would be devastating.
Greg, correct
Good
me,
information.
you're also in the Pup Warner. My talking with Karen, enrollment is down on some of those as far as,
And this is no knock on them, but yeah,
No, it's
Pop
just-
Warner numbers are at an all-time low.
it's just a fact,
I hope
that's
it
all.
rebounds like all of us, but right now it's pretty. Me too. But they have a very successful program.
Maybe we're just getting ahead of ourselves. Why don't we just look at the rest of the presentation?
Yeah, I agree, it's just,
Yep.
Maybe it will just clarify itself as we get through these options.
Yep.
And then we can save all this for afterwards, maybe.
All right.
Okay.
where'd you leave off, Mark?
Option A, I think we pretty much finished going over it all. We still have B and C on this site. Any other questions on A?
Nope.
All right, so option B is the same site,
What's the other thing?
same existing town hall building, and the parking is very similar. The building footprint changed shape a little bit, and in this case, you see the familiar red patio and the blue outdoor activity, but in this case, it's in the front, and we'll see some comments about that in just a little while, but the reason for that is that an outdoor space that faces east, southeast is a good space. It is nice to be able to sit down and see people as they're coming in. I don't believe that this is going to be a heavily trafficked area that is going to be detrimental to sitting outside, especially if there's some screens or vegetative screen or fencing screen. But the main difference between this option and option A is the configuration of the building and the way that the front is. 255 parking spaces. Building is placed to maximize parking and access to outdoor activities. Ball fields remain untouched. Vegetated parking islands can reduce or eliminate subsurface stormwater detention. That's what I was talking about over here with these green stripes, and the tan or the sort of light color is the pedestrian walkway that collects people from the parking and directs them to the entry. Layout is dependent on the demolition of the existing town hall. Patio and outdoor activities expand into the existing pine grove. It does say patio, but we're intending to say that there are activities, like on the previous option, that can go into the pine grove.
Just to piggyback on what Marco's saying, the big advantage to this is putting the patio into the sun. So I'm a landscape architect, which you probably don't know, but with the patio on that side of the building, it would turn the patio in from a cold, pretty damp spot.
That's if you put it up here on the northern side.
If it's on the northern side, it's that's the side the moss on your siding grows on. It's pretty cold up there all the time. Hard surfaces are always cold up there. So the compromise is that we would be facing the parking lot, obviously, and we would have to do some strategic screening of that. But it would be nice, temperature-wise, and more comfortable. You would get way more sun over there, and it would actually be a livable patio compared to the one that's on the backside. So I believe the main objective of this second option is really to put that patio into the sun.
Yeah, and that hence the change in the building footprint to give more area towards the southeast side of the building.
Otherwise, A and B, I think, are pretty much the same.
Okay.
Any questions on option B? I'll move on to option C, which is in response to comments that we had. Completely different layout. So instead of the familiar town hall circle and the ball fields, all this is the same, but instead of putting the building on this part of the site, we put it over here on this part of the site. So as you come in, you'd have the building on your right. We have the the patio, the outdoor activities, the future expansion. In this case, the pickleball courts are adjacent to the senior center. That's interesting. An interesting combination. Let's see here. The 255 parking spaces. Simplified vehicular circulation puts drop-off on the right side of the site entrance. So when you're coming in, you can loop around. You can drop off, go park. I haven't been saying this, but we do have these service areas that can be off to the side. Vegetated parking islands can reduce or eliminate subsurface stormwater detention. Again, layout is dependent on the demolition of the existing town hall. So, you know, a little bit, quite different from the other two options which are up here. You know, we're a little bit closer to this neighborhood, but we feel like we've maintained enough of a buffer to not be a nuisance to the neighbors.
We've done some senior centers where the building's on that left side, and you drive in on the opposite side, and then you try to loop around to do the drop-off. It's pretty awkward to do that. So you end up going down a drive aisle and then coming back around, or if there's a bus that's trying to drop off into the drop-off. So this solves that problem, which I'm not even sure was in the comments, but it is a pretty big deal. So when you come in there, you're going to see the building now instead of seeing the parking lot. It's a pretty dramatic change from what you were going to see in the previous A and B options, which you drive in to see a parking lot. It's basically like going into a shopping plaza. This, you drive in, you get the whole long facade of the senior center. The downside is, again, the patio is up against the woods. So although we show it there now, I'm not sure that maybe we can work out another way to put it into the sun or something, but it is kind of, that patio's in a tough spot, but the building really is appreciated when you come in off of the entry drive. And the drop-off is appropriate. The accessible spaces are right there. The future expansion is logical to the southwest. So I just wanted to emphasize that change, because on paper and plan view from the air, it's not able to grasp that functionality.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have some concerns about this particular site, but it comes with some questions. I had the opportunity to speak to some direct abutters that live right there behind this location, and they brought up some good concerns. So I guess the first question was, how much of the wooded area in between would be impacted by this, if any?
Well, we tried to maintain at least 20 to 40 foot. You can see the scale here. 100 is that, 100 feet is like that. We're a little tight here. You can see some of the buildings, adjacent buildings here. But I would venture to say that we're minimum 150 feet away from, this looks like the closest structure.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Is it close?
It's very close. I mean, I think we've all seen it, but it's very,
It's
very
closer
thin.
than it is today, for
Very
sure.
thin. So, I mean, I guess I would have a concern if any, I mean, it's already super thin, that wooded area. If any of those trees were going to be impacted, I'd have a little concern, because that's the only buffer that the neighbors have. The second question that was raised when I spoke with them was, and we haven't talked about this, is their question, and you can see it illustrated with this visual, that there's a walkway that is heavily trafficked by folks, from walking dogs to traveling back and forth in the neighborhood. Is that blocked by this? I'm not. The pedway.
The pedway is absolutely impacted.
It is.
Would have to relocate it.
Okay, I think that would be concerning, given the fact that, how many people walk that path, including myself, over, every day. It seems like people walk that. So I would have really concerns if that was going to be impacted.
I can answer the proximity to the buildings for you in context to concept A and B. Concept C has the building farther away from the adjacent properties than the proposed parking lot in A and B. So in A and B, the parking lot is closer to those abutters, and the clearing is more than this solution is in C. So there's less clearing in C than A and B.
Interesting. Thank you. So.
But the building will rise.
Right.
Yeah, no doubt that in the winter you'll see it, even if it's 100 or 150 feet away.
I think losing the pedway would be a huge concern for me.
Well, I'd like to think that we could work with what we have and be able to, move around in a different direction, and then, maybe reconnect.
But just to be clear, the pedway would remain in options A and B under this proposal. Option A.
I wish that we had marked it. I don't know that we knew about the pedway when we
It would come in at one of the parking spaces.
And I promised them that I would bring this up, because I know they're probably watching, but under none of these options would that potentially be opened up as a roadway, correct?
But we were not anticipating.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure, we hadn't talked about it, so I want to make sure it's clear that under no circumstances, under any options, are we looking to open that roadway up.
But we would want to be, trail and path friendly. Like,
I meant for vehicle traffic, for vehicles.
And I was addressing the pedway that you were talking about. We would not come in and just sort of wipe it away. We would try to work with it. come up with some, reasonable alternative solution.
This reduces the noise to the neighbors for their concerns, because the vehicular traffic and the headlights that would come in off of the previous options go towards the woods. And the building being there essentially blocks the entire parking lot off visually as a screening option. And we can do a lot more things with a building facade than we can with a parking lot. The most you can do with a parking lot is try to plant to screen it off. A building, you can make, obviously with all the architectural options that there are, we can make the building look nice too. It's a matter of what looks nice to the neighbors, But the parking lot, at the end of the day, the most we can do is put infill into the woods to try and screen that off. So we try to address a couple of pylon situations with the neighbors there.
Any more discussion on this? Before we move to the question.
All right, so questions and responses. I'm going to skip the first two because they're the same on all of them, and we've already discussed them. It had to do with the access around the building and the graphic scale. Starting here on S2.1, page 1 has what appears to be an entryway, shaded opening, gray shaded opening, but it is unclear where that goes or what purpose that would be. This comment appears to be in reference to a turnaround at the service entrance. It's not an additional entrance to the site. Site team will clarify. Jeff, I think that might have been one of your comments. I'm not sure if we've addressed that on.
Yeah, I think that was that one of those service areas that was along the side of the building?
You want me to go back so we can see it, or?
No, I think I'm.
You think you're fine? Okay. The service entrance is on the west side of the building on pages 1 and 2. The narrow gray line appears to be a walkway. Page 1 has a wider gray line, which perhaps is a driveway, which runs parallel to the building. Is it advisable to require box trucks, of which the public buildings has to deliver supplies, to either back into the delivery zone or drive in and back out? That area will be further narrowed during winter with snowbanks. The page 2 diagram does not appear to have a paved driveway to the service area, but a slight opening, meaning delivery trucks would need to park at the edge of the parking area and would have greater distance to go to the building. So, as I previously noted, the service access to the building varies by site configuration. The design team will simplify service access to reduce delivery truck backup distances. And that would also be combined with that, the subsurface reinforcement for turf areas. So a drive might go up to the side of the building to where maybe the dumpster is or something of that sort, and then it might continue as turf, but be accessible for fire apparatus and such. So, as we develop the sites, we'll make sure and move the interior, start laying out the interior of the building. We'll make sure that that we have access to the 3 sites, that the service drive goes to the most prominent spot is probably near the kitchen, where you'll receive deliveries and such. And so as we work on the layout of the building, we'll further refine the service and entry drives.
That was a concern that I had. I just am a little bit leery of having these long driveways where either the delivery truck has to drive in and then back out on a straight line all the way back to the main road, or vice versa. We're
going to try to minimize those
Right.
distances, and where we can, maybe we can, do a hammerhead kind of turnaround if that's a better solution. But
Yeah.
maybe wider and shorter is the way to go. And then that's why I've been saying about this subsurface system, because that way it looks like turf, it acts like turf, but when needed, you can access it,
Yeah.
in particular for emergency vehicles and stuff.
Yeah,
You can see
right.
it a lot shorter.
Shall I move on to the next question?
Sure, good.
Yeah.
I would think that the patio and outdoor activity area should be shielded or buffered from the sizable parking zone, which is in diagram 1. The noise from traffic would detract from the experience. We want to create an inviting entrance to the building with some seating and gathering opportunities at the entrance, and I think that can be done without requiring the patio and outdoor activities area to be up front. And we do have this option A or C, which has an alternate configuration of outdoor activities. Landscape and fencing screens will be implemented. So, Any other questions on anything here? I'm going to move on. There are a couple of pages of comments on this.
Let's go.
Diagrams A and B note that the town hall remains functional during construction. Would the staging area be in the Pine Grove or football fields? This clearly has the advantage that this option is not premised on the town school administration building being constructed first, which would raise concerns to many. These options in the longer term would be dependent upon town hall being removed, correct? Making the success of one project contingent upon the success of another project has significant advantages. Correct? The town hall would remain operational during construction in either case. These test fits assume that the eventual demolition of the existing town hall, refer to the combined sites diagram for test fit that accommodates the existing town hall. So we do have that option that's coming up. The white lines amidst the green parking islands are presumably walkways. Page 1 has no such walkway. Page 2 has any reason. Yes, the light color indicates a walking path. The number of pedestrian paths through the parking area will be refined during the schematic design phase. It might be that we just didn't put it on one, but it's a concept that we can use on any of the layouts.
The other property.
It would be nice to break up the sea of parking in some manner, and perhaps that would happen as the landscaping is developed. Since there's a pedway on the opposite side of the parking lot from the buildings on page 1 and 2, and it connects with Garden Avenue, which is a side street that extends into some residential neighborhoods. That creates another walking opportunity and should somehow be emphasized so that seniors feel safe walking across the parking lot to and from that headway. The design team will continue to develop the parking areas based on zoning guidelines for off-street parking and the site design best practices. That was addressing one part of that. The parking aisles are illustrated to accommodate planting and trees in between wheel stops and the aisle ends. A connection to the existing pedestrian walkway at Garden Avenue will be incorporated into the site design. Last comment on this page. The access to the Pine Grove area for outdoor gatherings extends the open space around the patio and outdoor activities. Needs to include the Pine Grove and outdoor activity area for the illustrations. So we did include that. That's a good amenity that we wanted to take advantage of. Unfortunately, we have more of this, so. And I'm only saying unfortunately because it's a lot of reading, excuse me. Am I doing okay reading like that?
Doing great.
Okay.
Just keep reading.
All right, I'll take a deep breath here. One potential conflict might occur when when Pop Warner and Little League parents come in the afternoon. The senior center is currently open until 5 p.m. I will need to observe more closely, but vehicles start coming in to drop off kids around 5 p.m. and after. This may pose some traffic and parking issues with seniors who are still at the center at 5 p.m. or if they are there after hour, or if there are after-hour programs depending upon their size. It would be advisable to check with Karen Campbell, Recreation Director, who schedules the fields about times when sporting events are scheduled. There are some Saturdays when the fields are used for sports. Currently, this would not be a problem as activities at the senior center do not typically occur on Saturdays. It would also be wise to have conversations with the head of Pop Warner and the head of Little League to understand any concerns they might have when parents, students arrive to use the fields, etc. Karen Campbell can provide the contact. It was questioned last night as to whether anyone had reached out to the groups. We want to make that connection. As an aside, yesterday about 5 p.m., a regular-sized yellow school bus pulled in behind my office. It appeared that one of the Pop Warner teams had an away game as the kids all boarded the bus and the bus headed out. I have seen this on occasion and also instances in which a bus will pull in and park, presumably waiting to pick up the visiting team. Again, the two organizations will have a better handle on how often that happens. I tried to break it down a little bit. The community group meeting should be arranged through the OPM to gather more information about site utilization. We've contacted P3 to arrange with these two organizations.
You did?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
A traffic study for each site should be conducted to evaluate traffic demand, so we've got that in the works. Shared use of parking could reduce the overall parking demand and offer flexibility. I'm gonna go on and read this and see if there are any questions.
Good.
Unless that was long enough. Any questions on that one? Maybe it's better to.
No,
handle them
we
one.
already went over that.
All right. A value to locating the senior center at the town hall site rather than St. Dorothy's is that it is all self-contained, and there is no worry about seniors trying to walk across Glen Road to get to the courts, fields, or walking paths. Even driving from St. Dorothy's to the town hall, while possibly safer than walking across Glen Road, is still challenging. I have received calls from many residents over the years who live on side streets off Glen Road who are seeking the town. I'm sorry, I'm seeing this at an angle and I'm starting to, I keep on wanting to push the screen towards me. Excuse me. I have received calls from many residents over the years who live on side streets off Glen Road who are seeking the town to take some action because of the challenges due to the site distance, etc., in pulling onto Glen Road. The design team will work with the town to identify off-site improvements that increase the success of the project, regardless of the preferred site that is selected. So we're going to resolve.
We're gonna have traffic challenges, no matter what site we select. We will identify with the traffic engineers what solutions will make the problem better.
But one other point I think has to be made is that, and I think you did this in future drawings, is, like the St. Dorothy site, you cut off that portion, that, goes along Glen Road when you had the development. So, you know, we wouldn't have that problem there.
That's right.
But, I think, coming out of this road here, and, you know, we have curves. We have curves on one side and one curves. They're blind curves, and it is extremely difficult. And I would think, as a senior myself, you know, with the time change and everything, coming out at night is a problem. And I just think that that's going to continue to be a problem, especially with the one road coming in. I can just see myself leaving that road and seeing a big yellow bus coming down, you know, towards me as I'm leaving the road, you know, from something that I've attended at the senior center. So we have several issues there.
Yeah, we're going to try to identify those issues and find solutions for them as part of this traffic. Any questions on these two? Nope. We have one more. Note C on the site plan says the existing town hall is functional during construction. That is misleading. It should also state that this option only works after the existing town hall is demolished and therefore a new town hall is constructed on another site. There should be a statement to that effect. And then, you know, we did have it on 2.4, which was one of the previous questions. I can go back if you guys want.
No.
I'm smiling under here. A site plan like this would not make it through the site plan approval process with the planning board because the proposed building is dependent upon the demo of the town hall, which there's no assurance that it would happen. So again, that's a similar question. I'm referring you to the same answer we gave before. This site plan and all the others under review do not show a service road around the building for deliveries as discussed at previous meetings. The kitchen is to be in the back, at the back. Also need to make provisions for the monthly drive-through events. In addition, need to provide fire and emergency vehicle access, typically 20 feet wide, which could also be the same as service road. Showing these roads is important even in this preliminary phase because they could affect setbacks from the property line and location of parking areas. And we did have a similar response in item S 1.1 for emergency access. You know, to note is that the kitchen hasn't yet been located in these test fits. The design team will incorporate drive-through events in the design considerations for the test fits and the building design. So as I've said numerous times, we will make sure that emergency access to the three sides of the building will be made, and it'll be done, you know, using different devices depending on, you know, what we want to do. If we're going to continue showing this option and option B, the existing town hall should be shown dotted on the plan so as to provide some perspective as to its location. And we do show it dashed in. At this point in the design, it may be appropriate for Dietz to utilize their civil consultant to assist in these layouts. John Hammer, colleague, SRL, has been included in the test fit process and has attended the building committee meetings. This is your second, I think.
I think Mark was at the first one, but I never.
Oh, yeah. The construction of the senior, did I miss this one? The construction of the senior center should not be dependent on the construction of the proposed town hall. To do so would push the construction of the senior center 4 to 5 years down the road. And then, we've already addressed this issue. Option B, the patio area and outside activity areas at this site or any site should not be in front of the building. Again, we've addressed these. These are variations of similar questions. Concerned that this site might be dependent on how the vote or progress of Town Hall presents a need for a service road around the building or to the sides of the,
Sides of the building.
that doesn't seem right. I'm gonna have to apologize because that must have been snipped off or somehow modified. So I'm not able, that's not correct. Emergency vehicle, handicap parking spaces, we've identified those to a certain extent or discussed them that they're more part of the schematic design phase, not the conceptual phase. Please show existing town hall a map, and would like to see outdoor area and back as a quiet area, and again, we've discussed that. Any questions? Move on.
Any questions from the committee?
Oops.
No? Oh, back,
Mr. Chairman,
George.
in light of the fact that we have a lot of seniors here tonight and the hour is getting late, I know there's been another 6 slides, I think, talk about Glen Road. Will we at least talk about St. Dorothy site at least for a little while before we get bogged down for another half hour? Some of these seniors will leave before we even talk about St. Dorothy.
I could appreciate that. Maybe we could speed through these ones. The next ones show multiple buildings on this location, so I hate to.
Go quick.
I think it'll go fairly quick,
It'll go real fast. It's,
and I do appreciate everyone's patience. Thanks for coming out, but I think through this we were kind of tasked with leaving no stone unturned, and we're doing our due diligence here. So.
Okay. So Glen Road combined site. So what? Just as an orientation here, existing town hall. This time it remains. What we would do is we would take 2 parts of the 2 base. So this is the existing ball field area. 2 baseball fields to the east, soccer, football in the center. 2 more baseball fields towards the west. We're essentially taking over 2 of those baseball fields. Senior center would be constructed in this area with construction laydown. What's in red would be fenced off and protected from access. So you could still have a functioning town hall with public access and have construction for the senior center. Town hall, 25 spaces. Layout is dependent on the demolition of the existing town hall, senior center constructed. Just go ahead and move quickly.
Yep.
So in this option, once the senior center is built and the parking is built, you still have access to it. You have construction access this way, public access here. Once the senior center is complete, and you have your parking, you would have your outdoor activity area, patio area, access to the trails. Existing town hall remains. Now, if we're constructing a new town hall, and the senior center is already complete and is independent, you could fence off the area for the new town hall construction so that all 3, one could be built while the other 2 are functioning. And once the town hall is built and the existing town hall is demolished, this area is already built and functioning. You would then have the town hall, the senior center, both on the same site, parking for both, and at the expense of the 2 baseball fields. So this layout is not dependent on the demolition of the existing town hall. Vegetative parking on islands reduced. So similar notes to all. That that is the content. I went fast. I can go back over.
How was that? Not too bad? We got through that. All right. I think we're good.
All right. We had these same site collection comments. I'm going to read those quickly.
I think we can dispense. I move to dispense with the reading of them.
The first two are just repetitive.
We can go back to it.
Is there anything here that we think that needs to be?
This exercise came from our joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen.
Absolutely.
It was actually a valuable exercise to actually prove that all three uses are really difficult on this site. But I think it was a wise thing for the selectmen to tell us to do it, just so that we could, stand up and look at town meeting without lying and say that it's tough to have all three uses on the same site.
Right. Not a fan of having both.
Is that a fair summary?
Yeah. Mr. Chair, if I may, just briefly, I'll just say that absolutely, I think slides 16 through 21 just would not work for us.
Right.
So thank you for those.
Yeah, I mean,
Hear that back there. Repeat that again.
We didn't hear Dan, couldn't hear Dan.
Oh, I'm sorry. What I said was that this exercise was an exercise based out of the meeting we had with the Board of Selectmen, and it was a valuable exercise because it demonstrated that all three uses really do not work on this site. It's tight, and it's difficult, and you lose playing fields permanently.
all right, move on. So here we go, the St. Dorothy's Main Street site. I think you're all situated, oriented, we're currently over here. You can see a little piece of corner of that lot. Buildable areas in the yellowy color. And we have three options, A, B, and C. So here we are with our familiar parts. There's the building footprint with the patio area and expansion area and outdoor activities area. And by now you recognize the parking. This does have a good access for accessible parking. Building is visible, parking is visible in front of the building. So as you drive by, clearly the parking is facing the street. The building is set further back. A little note about the building. It's almost a courtyard building, but it's U-shaped and facing south to get that solar orientation, which I think is quite good for the building. I think the patio, the outdoor spaces will be great because they're facing the right orientation. Service difficult to access. We would have, this is that service line which would continue, and over here we would try to do something similar. And then we do have access on the other two sides of the building. Similar to the other options, the vegetated parking can reduce or eliminate subsurface. So, we've got the green aisles, which could be for water detention, and then the gray access path, which leads you towards the entrance. Drop off, you would come in, loop around, you'd have the drop off on the right side.
Just working with Dietz on this from the civil side. We were working on this concept and obviously the other ones, and the service shouldn't be taken too lightly on this because there is an ability to do a K-turn there, and right now we're showing parking spaces in that area. When we get into the next stage of design, if this is accepted, there's going to be some loss of parking spaces to get an SU-30 or whatever truck back into there. And the other thing that's worth noting is that service truck is going to go in front of all of those parking spaces to get down to the back. And those would probably be where we would try to add some accessible parking spaces. So I know it's noted on there as the service is difficult, but I wanted to expand on what that actually meant.
Okay.
Plus, you have a limited length, so if you try to put I'll use a school bus just for the reference of size, but if you had a single tractor trailer truck that brought food, like a food service truck, like a 35-foot trailer or something, we can make it work. The question is what does it mean? And at this point, we obviously haven't fleshed that out, but it was worth mentioning because I know we bulleted it on the slide. So,
And John, that might be dependent on whether or not you need to have that paved area all the way back. I mean, I'm not sure that the kitchen's going to be that far back, or that's why we.
I know we were talking about that turning movement to get back there.
Yeah.
So.
I think that's something that we're going to have to investigate on whatever option that we take, and will be further developed during schematic design. Any other questions on this, or you guys want to look at B?
Yep, please.
So option B, a lot of room around the building. It's oriented in a different, it's not it's perpendicular to the street. You have parking in the front. You can see the building from the street. The familiar outdoor spaces and future expansion, patio, building footprint. Parking is visible in front of the building, tight constraints to the wooded buffer to the south. So we do want to be careful about, getting too close here, but, if you look at the graphic scale, it looks like we're over 200 feet away. Accommodates a large outdoor activity area, so this is quite large. And I know one of the things to note is that we stopped showing that connection over to Glen Road, although that area is still available for walking trails and such.
So on this plan, it's similar to the point that was made in one of the designs at the Glen Road, that patio area, because it's so close to the wooded area, would perhaps be challenging in terms of capturing the sun. Is that your statement?
Well, we pulled it about 100 feet away or so, between 50 and 100 feet away from the edge. I believe that angle would work right in the summertime. John, do you think that's far enough? I mean, we could.
It's much better than it being on the north side.
And we had also talked about a pavilion type, that, it looks like.
There's a lot of space on there on that left side of the building.
Right.
Over there, so.
Yeah. You could put a pavilion area there where,
The
they,
courtyard concept is nice, it's cool because you can see it from inside, there's a lot of great, the whole concept of bringing the indoors, outdoors, trying to treat the outdoors like the indoors,
Yeah.
make it interchangeable. But if through just further development, the patio doesn't work in that location, the nice thing is you have an immediate green space to the left of it that's right there, so. But
Yeah.
yes, it's,
Across the country
it
shop.
would be better if there were no trees.
The outdoor pavilion, along with other exterior amenities, are still
This is
in development
pioneer.
as part of the program and
that's
would
got a
be,
main into.
again, further expanded during schematic design.
One of the other things I think too is, we've got sewer there on Pine Ave. We've got a main interceptor sewer there. And, that goes right down to the railroad tracks. So, sewerage, would play a big role in this type of a building and not limit us, especially with bathrooms and any other facilities that we have. Whereas,
We have sewage here.
we have sewage at here. Okay. And we also have gas here too, right?
No, gas is at St. Dorothy's.
They
could bring it.
Yeah, but St. Dorothy's has gas. But there is no gas at the,
They'd have to bring the line up.
they'd have to bring the line up. Okay. Okay.
Shall I move on?
Yeah, please do.
So option C is completely different. By now, we're always familiar with these pieces, the building footprint, patio, outdoor areas, future expansion. And what we've done here is we pulled the building up to the street, the building at front of the site for greater street presence, simplified vehicular circulation, puts drop-off at the right side of the entry. So that means that you can come in, just pull over into the drop-off area and then continue and go park.
I was just, I'm sorry, Rocco.
No, it's okay.
In this one, I was just saying that this property, St. Dorothy's property is so beautiful that it's a shame to have the building so close to the street, whereas the other two, you did have it into the more into the property, that it's not really close to the.
I would say that is a true statement. However, this building has multiple fronts in a way. It's similar to the Swain School, where you'll have a presence on the street, so the building will look handsome and everybody will see it and recognize it. But as you move around, the entry is going to be its own feature, and it is, the way that it is right here, it is a U-shaped courtyard building facing south, and so it has a lot of the same advantages as option B. However, you don't see the parking in front of the building, you see it, once you enter the site. And
From a zoning perspective, a planning and zoning perspective, if you were gonna do land use layout at planning, you'll notice that the front of this building on Main Street lines up with the residential houses that are to the south. And it shares the presence on the street in the corridor in the proximity to the road. So whereas if the building is set back,
Yep.
it's kind of odd where you have this green space in the front from a visual
Yep.
perspective. So what we tried to do in this one is flip the script, if you will, bring the building right up, not right up, it's still 100 feet away from the road, but it respects the context of the rest of the corridor on Main Street. So it's not an oddball in that regard. Whether or not you like it or not, that was the objective.
No, I appreciate that. It
Yeah.
makes sense now the way you're.
Yeah, just from a planning and zoning sort of reviewing. It helps with the patio too, you can, with this, we still get the same sort of building orientation as FMP, but it pulls it away. The comment, I was excited that the patio is too close to the woods, and I'm like, oh, show them, see, And it puts
You've got plenty of room in between.
the outdoor activities and the patio are close together. You get the right side drop off. You can loop around the building on the right side. The accessible parking is around the corner from the entry. Everything is really condensed and close together. All of the aisles are lined up in a certain direction. It's compact. We tried to address all of the comments with these C options. So.
I do notice that one of these options is only about 70 additional parking spots compared to what they have already at the senior center.
So the way the reason we use 165 is from the master plan. So from a zoning perspective, as best as you can tell, because they don't tell you, senior centers aren't included, we would have approximately 60 to 70 spaces.
Okay, so.
But instead of using that low number, we decided to use the number that was part of the master plan. We had mentioned that before, so
Right.
That's
Okay.
why the
Just pointing it out.
165 is a minimum.
Right.
Thank you very much. Marco, is there an option, similar to my previous question on the previous site, is there an option A, B, or C on this location that's of lesser impact to the residents there in terms of the buffer and the impact on the trees, wooded area there?
This
So-
one could be less impactful if we got rid of the low parking spaces.
Yeah, but I mean, you have to be realistic on this site. The site is completely heavily wooded. So anything we do on this site is gonna be culture shock to the neighbors.
I didn't know if just one was
Right.
favorable for them.
I would just say right off the bat that if we, just made this loop around, but extended these two out a little further, they're a little further from, right now the spaces are grouped around the building. They're as close to the building as they can be, including even these, but, we could take these and extend, and then they're a little further away, but we, have the same number and less.
I think the selectman wants to have less intrusive to the neighbors as opposed to more.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. It would be, if this is our hot spot where we're intruding, we could not intrude as much here and push over here where, there's some houses, but, this is a larger buffer area, so we can move things around a little bit, but there will be some impact.
And then also at the top is, on each of these options, I wonder if there's room to build, say, pickleball courts. I mean, is that something like that would fit up there, I think, right?
That's
top.
here?
Travel across the parking lot to the pickleball court.
I'm just trying to think of any use of that,
This,
up to the top, Marco, I'm sorry.
Up this way?
Yeah, would
Yeah,
that be?
Well, of course, that area is open for, whatever development the committee decides, but we do have 4 pickleball courts shown in that activity area there.
Any ledge in there or anything that you discovered when you went
We
through
have
there?
not, visually, no, there were those boulders around the entrance, but those were, brought in.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
We haven't done any geotechnical investigations or anything. Now, I want to say that the next is,
That's
we'll
it.
go through these as well, and then I think we're towards the end. I think
Yeah, you got one
that's
page.
the last page.
That's the last page.
Can I read off these comments?
Yep, please do.
Actually, I forwarded without saying, any questions? Are we good moving on to the questions?
I'm all set with this. The rest of the committee, fine.
All right. Previous comments on service road fire access apply here. That's true, and same response. Building should be rotated so that it is facing the street. So that's one of the things that we did in option C, so that we were responding to that comment. Eliminate pedestrian access and vehicular access to Glen Road, and we did that. We did not show either, access. Don't like this layout. Too close to homes on Mass Avenue. So, we have options A and B, which are different.
Not in my backyard comment.
Yeah.
Turn the building clockwise and move to the left
Get
for a
plenty of that.
larger main entrance. So the building orientation is optimized for daylight access. The design of the building interior is not yet represented in this test fit, but those little bump outs and the courtyard scheme I think is a good layout to use. It's a good concept that is, we can manipulate it as we want. With the entrance on the side, concerned of the length of walk-in building. So the design of the building interior is not represented. Interior layout will be developed during schematic design. We're going to avoid long corridors and stuff like that. So some of the layouts might look big, but when you consider that one whole half of the building or a whole chunk of it, might be large spaces like the dining area or a multi-purpose room. It's not like you're having to walk all the way to the end, because once you enter the room, that room might be 60 feet wide. And again, that's something that we'll get into during schematic design. When turned this way, Main Street gets to see the beauty of the full building. That was an option A, which was, part of it was facing the street. And that was where we developed option C from as well. Outside area, too close to Main Street, possibly better to place on the other side. That was option B, and design team revised the outdoor activity area location. So we tried to change the outdoor space. Patio appears very isolated with long building. That was an option B. You said that the patio has been reworked and is more integral to the building layout. The patio in some of these cases turned out to be that courtyard that the U-shaped building creates. Building seems pushed back too far into property. So that was one option that the building was further back. So we have two alternates that are different. Turn counterclockwise to the right. Again, Main Street getting full view of, something got hidden, but full view of the street. Full view of the building. And that was similar to two other comments that we have.
Very good.
And then the last pages are thank you page. Shall I go back to a particular site plan for discussion?
Not yet until we bring it up on the committee and see if there's any discussion on what we've seen.
I just have to say it's extremely helpful. I'm so sorry, I don't know your first
John,
name.
Aaron.
John, with his input on some of these questions that we've had, that kind of clears things up and kind of gives a better idea of the layout. Because I really do like that. Even though I commented how close it was to the road, now I totally understand.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Greg?
I totally agree with Ms. Marciello. I think it's super helpful to have that there. You did mention, John, at one point, though, like in terms it would, at one point, the next phase of exploration, could you maybe give us an idea of what that might entail? Based either of the two good sites. I mean, what would that entail?
When we go to the next stage of development, a lot of the parts that, a lot of the questions are sort of revolving around it's like the service adjacent to the kitchen. Where does the kitchen end up? What size truck do we need? How many dumpsters do we need to accommodate? How many accessible parking spaces do we want? Because I can assure you that the code isn't enough, most likely, for what you're going to want to do, which you can bring that to the table. The amount and size of your shuttle bus, shuttle vans. Everybody seems to have something different from an old school or whatever they get them. But I have to apologize, I'm not familiar with all of your equipment. But we'll work out turning radii into the sites, into all these areas, configure the parking out. But it's in harmony with the building and how the layout of the building is working. So my comment was just in regards to, a lot of this will change subtly as we move, some of it significantly depending on what the community decides to do, but.
Yeah, no, thank you. I totally agree with Terry. You know, this has been super helpful to have you here, both of you. Just to see these visuals helps us get a better idea what these two sites would look like, so thank you.
Everything's sort of compromised, unfortunately. It's like everybody, we would all like to have the perfect site, put everything on where it can be, but it's New England and all those sites are long gone. So we end up trying to, which is why you hire us, obviously, but just keep in mind, you know, if we do, when we try to do something over here, most likely it's gonna impact something over there. If we wanna put the patio in sunlight, then it might be next to a parking lot, and it becomes more of an outdoor seating area like you would see at a restaurant, which happens all the time. They put them in the front, and they're beautiful, and people love it. If you think about when you go to a restaurant, the patio is right there, like all these new breweries, we've done several of them recently. There's strung lights out there, you know, you can put a nice cedar fence, you can landscape it, it looks phenomenal. And everybody, and initially at this stage, you're like, oh man, putting that next to the parking lot is egregious. Like, who would do that? And then you think about other instances where it actually happens, like, oh, that's actually kind of cool, you know? So, again, it's about these compromises and balancing, you know, how important is it to have the sun out there? And, I mean, I'm no doctor, but you know, seniors like the sun, they get older sooner than everybody else. Surfaces matter, concrete versus versus, you know, all these different things, and all of that will get flushed out later on, so.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other discussion on the presentation, what we've seen? I'd like to go out to the audience if anybody had any questions before we move on. You had your hand up first. If you'd please state your name.
My name is Virginia Wilson, commonly known as Ginny.
And your address, Jenny?
48 Grand Ave.
Thank you.
You were talking about delivery trucks. One of the other things that has to be able to maneuver in the parking lot is when we have a trip, we have a full-size bus. You know, like a Greyhound bus type bus.
Yes.
Absolutely.
The Foxwood, right?
Good to know.
Yeah, I think at this point, any of these options will accommodate, you know, that kind of, it might be that it doesn't go underneath the canopy, perhaps, but yeah, you could get right near the front entrance.
Mr. Chair, having spoken to both chiefs, they indicated in the report that they want to, you know, reserve comment when they can see the final design, but certainly we're going to want to hear from both of them.
Right.
On these,
I too have spoken to Chief Desmond and Chief Kavanaugh, and that was both of their comments, that once the design phase starts coming, both sites are able to handle their apparatus, their equipment, but once design comes, they'll have a lot more input.
Yeah, I think that'll be crucial, is when we get the feedback.
Absolutely.
We will be designing knowing that we need to have access on three sides.
Right.
And from a security standpoint, we usually, as we're getting into the detail of the design, bring in the police. You know, some of the centers we've done, we've actually reserved one spot for you know, municipal vehicles in case there's a response needed by an ambulance or a response needed by a police officer, and it does happen. So.
Okay.
Deborah Russo, 902 Lord's Court. I gotta say, I love St. Dorothy's Option C. I really do. And one of the things I really like about it is that it's private and self-contained. I love that the building's in front, so it's not all you driving by looking at cars. I love that in that location, seniors don't have to vie with sport family, you know, families taking their kids to sports, or students who, you know, they're gonna use that parking lot. I don't care what color the sticker is. I mean, if it's winter, you know. We don't have to compete with any of that. You know, our own pickleball court, so we don't have to wait in line or sign up. My question is, there's an arm of green, and I don't know, I saw the site recently, there's lots of woods and stuff, and I don't know how, I guess my question is, how big is that? Is it acres or what? And wouldn't that be beautiful for walking trails? I mean, one of the big comments was, oh, seniors will have to cross Glen Road to get to the, but, I mean, couldn't you just put walking trails in there, so we wouldn't have to cross Glen Road at all?
ROPM.
So there is a big arm there, and I think it's 5 or 6 house lots that are laid out that run the length of Glen Road. When we do, you know, the next phase with instrument survey to see how steep it is, it's going to be the steepness that determines whether paths are viable or not. So I think that should we have an option to be able to use the green space, everyone has always indicated they wanted outdoor green space.
Yeah.
So we didn't indicate it because to indicate it today would be, you know, a false promise. But if it can happen, it'll be added.
But that's land that we can use for stuff like that.
That is land that is attached to the St. Dorothy's purchase.
Excellent, excellent. And you know what else? Just one more quick thing. I love the way the patio faces the outdoor activities. So you actually have stuff to, you know, sit and you can watch people play.
Right.
This is a really nice job. Thank you.
Thank you. Again to the back.
Get some over here too.
You. Ken Clarkin, 39 Reno Road.
Yep.
I had a question about slide number 16. Showed a construction layout area in red.
On the soccer field there, or
Yeah.
the baseball diamond?
Why shouldn't that area also be shown on slides 9, 10, and 11?
So the red construction laydown area is for the construction of the senior center. And you see page 9, 10, and 11?
Yeah, no, that doesn't encroach on those fields.
Yeah, so the reason it isn't shown is because those slides were specifically for the purpose of not impacting the fields.
Okay, but now that construction area will impact the parking for both sports and for other people using that area.
So I envision, as the project manager who will be dealing with the construction, that all the area in blue will be built last, which is the outdoor activity area, and that'll end up being your laydown area for all your materials in your parking. So it's a pretty large space there. Contractor will go in, fence off the site, and use from, you know.
So that expansion, that blue area, part of that is already trees, so some of those trees are coming down?
They're gonna come down for the final plan anyhow.
Okay.
So they can come down for the construction laydown area.
So that's not a grove where people will be sitting out in and among the trees, that's gonna be a flat, well, I don't wanna say flat, but that's, that area has been undergone.
Go ahead.
So that blue area there, outdoor activities, could be underneath the pine grove. I'm not sure what the appetite is for cutting down those nice mature trees.
No, I know, but if that's the area where the construction materials are gonna be sitting.
So one of the things I wanted to clarify, just so people know, is that on page 16, this is that, you know, the joint development, you know, actually triple, you know, in some cases, they all three buildings, and we're taking over 2 of the baseball fields. You know, this is a completely different animal from what options, the Glen Road options A, B, and C, because we're leaving the baseball fields alone. We're not doing anything on the baseball fields. And so the only question here, which we discussed at length, was whether or not the existing town hall will remain long after, you know, what the status would be. But this site is so large that there'll be, you know, I think there'll be plenty of laydown area that, you know, we can develop the pine grove and that outdoor activity area however we want. We're not forced into cutting down trees but we thought that would be a nice place to be able to hang out. It might not have, you know, active sports, but it would have activities that you could do under that area without disturbing the canopy.
But there will be some spot, like that red area, where you have to lay down construction materials and use for that purpose.
Yes, the objective also is to keep it on
you can't see it.
off of the fields, that's all. That's the difference between the
So
two.
on this picture, it's gonna be in the parking area.
Well, frequently the parking is towards the end of the project. So the
Okay.
contractor will clear the area,
Okay.
it'll be a flat field, And, you know, the contractor will determine which areas, you know, are gonna be laid down. And
All right.
we'll certainly have to maintain some parking for the fields to be active. But I feel like that would be towards the southeast corner of the site. Maybe that parking remains and services the pickleball courts, the playground, and the ball fields. Whereas the area to the northwest during construction, you know, areas around the building will be laid down, and, you know, the construction trailer.
Okay.
And, you know, it's a little challenging, but I think it's completely manageable on all three of these sites or options. That one,
Yeah.
same here. This was a little bit different, but yeah, they, you know, get, option C, you would just, you know, the area to the northeast would be the parking for the ball fields and, you know, town hall. So I don't see construction sequencing as an issue on any of these options A, B, or C for the Glen Road site.
Okay, okay. Excuse me, sir.
Linda Toth, 54 Fiorenza Drive. I just have one question. It's 18,000 square feet that building is going to be. Is that 18,000 square feet separated between 2 floors, or is it 18,000 square feet on a level floor? So there's no 2 floors spread out?
Right now, we're looking up for a 1-story building. We're not considering a 2-story building. 18,000 feet is the program that we've developed to date.
But that's also the design phase. We're still looking at the site location here. Once we start getting into the design phase, that could be something totally.
I just wanted to know.
Absolutely.
because I
We have to get through this
listened
first
to you
hurdle.
had 2 floors
Right.
and
Good question.
And another one that was all spread across, so I
Correct.
was just wondering whether it was 1 or 2.
Excuse me. What was your name again, sir?
Linda Toth, T-O-T-H.
Thank you, Linda.
Hi, Jim Buckles, 6 Pinewood Road. In my opinion, the most expeditious and viable site is St. Dorothy's, it's ready to go. You go to the town hall, and we know that the article might not pass, and it's a good chance it won't pass. There's too many other important things in town that have to be done, fire stations, the senior center should be #1, fire station #2, and then the town hall should be #3, in my opinion. Now, the thing is, if we build the senior center here, now the senior center building becomes empty. That can be used temporarily by the administration buildings or some other offices they don't want to move over. Don't like that, Jimmy. The senior centers have been there for, stuck in that building for, I don't know, 100 years. They can stay in this building for 4 years.
About the same time, isn't it 84? Was it 84?
86, 84.
We were here in 84 in this building. Yeah, so it's about the same. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
I know we have a lot more questions. Go
Ed
ahead.
Barrasso, 24 Nassau Ave. When you guys make the decision, what's the timetable? Are we gonna have to wait another 10 or 15 years? Will we be able to see it? Sir?
Good question.
So the plan at this point, given the annual town meeting, as most people know, is April 30th. Since we're still at a point of trying to establish a site for these buildings, we're not in a position to bring this to the April 30th town meeting. So I would envision a special town meeting in the fall of 2022 to appropriate funds for this project.
We need a place to hang out. Really, this is what this is all about.
Yeah.
For seniors.
I know it.
We need a place to go. We've been going to Tux Street, beautiful there.
Yeah.
And that was an addition.
I agree with you. I agree with you.
We're trying.
Yeah, little patience.
Yeah.
Yeah, little
We
patience.
get
But
one
you can't
shot
wait-
at
We can't wait for another 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
Time is not our
You get it.
friend.
In the back. Wait, one more in the back.
Yep, George Allen, 7 Stone Edge Drive. Just to give some of the seniors here a little bit of background on the St. Dorothy site. The St. Dorothy site was the #1 site for the senior center based on a joint meeting held between this committee and a separate committee that's evaluating town hall sites. There was a joint meeting on September 15th. That joint committee, with input from the architects who we've paid money for,
came up with St. Dorothy's as the #1 site for the senior center, and the Swain property, i.e. down at the town common, the #1 site for the town hall, just to put it in perspective. So they did that based on evaluation of 17 criteria. That's number one. Number two, the property that we're talking about at St. Dorothy's was purchased or voted to be acquired November 2013, 8 years ago. Jeff was town manager, and I think the only selectman currently on the board that was there was Selectman O'Connell. She was the only one that was there of the current selectmen. And they voted $1.725 million for that property. And it passed overwhelming. It was like 197 to 9. Okay, so it was overwhelming. And during the discussion, and you can get it on YouTube, you can see it. It's not a long meeting, about an hour and 15 minutes. And they talked about using this property for a future town building. It sat there for 8 years. The future is now. Time to use it.
Special meeting.
Time to use it. A couple other things, Robin, I'll let you go.
Okay.
When we were talking about the town hall site, the Glen Road site, we're talking about the trails. And I think Deborah mentioned the property, the green space on the St. Dorothy site. There's 2.5 acres there. Plenty of room to make some trails. The town owns that. The town owns all that property along Glen Road, right down to Harmon Street. So that's 2.5 acres. Plenty of room to make hiking trails. That's not a problem. And to satisfy Jim, we'll have some new pickleball courts here, Jim. Won't have to use the other ones at town hall. The other thing about this site, and somebody else has mentioned it, it's independent of any other project. There's no baggage at this site.
No basketball.
So this I think is the site that I think the seniors, once they get into it and understand it, I think they'll like this site best. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'll take one more, and then I'm gonna come to Goodney.
Robin Theodos, 73 Clark Street, Wilmington. If this was selected by professionals that we hired as the #1 site for the senior center, and there were 2 other sites, how did that evolve into, who came up with the idea of putting it on town hall property? If this was why did they stray? This was
ideal.
#1 site. We paid for this information.
Right, that's what was brought to the committee as we went through. It's still a discussion amongst the committee, and we take a vote. And we've been tasked with looking at the best site. Yeah.
I understand that. I don't see why we have to be involved with competing with sports, and the town hall might be in the way. I just don't see the need for that when this was selected as the #1 site. No baggage, like you said, no problem.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. Go ahead.
You want me to try to answer that?
Go ahead.
Or do you want to do it, Craig?
I thought, I just wanted to address the gentleman from Nassau's Road. I wonder if we could reiterate the timeline you kind of discussed, try to give him a better answer.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when we were, if we go back in time to when we were doing the Matrix, the town hall project was lagging behind the senior center project, and one of the factors was the fact that there was a town hall in this building, and I think that when we met jointly with the Board of Selectmen, they asked us to reevaluate and to overturn every stone that we could. They asked us to do the double use on the Glen Road site, And I think tonight we've demonstrated that we've answered all the questions of the Board of Selectmen. And I think that the question, which is a valid question, is if the town hall does not pass, the Glen Road site does not work. But if the town hall option passes, does the Glen Road site provide more parking? Yes. Does it provide more ample opportunity for other things? It does. And I think what we were trying to do this evening is demonstrate that there are other options should the town hall pass. Now, obviously, we don't know if either one of them have passed, and we would never recommend putting the senior center on this site if the town hall does not pass, because it will not fit long-term. It only works if the town hall passes. And I think that's why in the beginning, when we were talking back and forth, I asked you to look at it as if the town hall had passed. If the town hall doesn't pass, I don't think the design team or the OPM team would be asking the town of Wilmington voters to pass a significant amount of money for a building that's going to be cramped next to another building that has no certain future. But if the future's already been determined, then this site represents something different than when we did the matrix. Because when we did the matrix, we had no certainty on that portion. So that's all that's why we're back here. The selectmen had the foresight to ask us to stop, pause, and look at other options, and we have. And now we're at that point where we've looked at everything else. They've also asked us to be more communicative and to take in questions from the public, which is why, although this is a long meeting and we went through a lot of questions, that's why we're going through all these steps. So I just wanted to get that out.
Absolutely.
Mr. Chair, thank you, Dan. And I would also add that since the time that we asked for more information, we were, given all this great information. We were afforded the opportunity to hear from folks like John and Marco. And we've also, since that time, eliminated the Whitfield property. Tonight, I'm glad to see we've eliminated the Swain Green as an option for this particular site. And we're moving closer to what I think will be a good cost analysis. I mean, I think I don't want to speak for the entire Board of Selectmen, I'll only speak for myself, is that we are really concerned about how much is this going to cost at one site compared to the other. I think they're both great sites, to be honest with you. I have maybe my personal opinion, but I think they're great sites. Does one have a cost benefit to the others? We know that this is going to be costly for folks, and things are super expensive. We learned last night at the selectmen meeting that our tax rate, unfortunately, is going up again. So I mean, that's a reality that we have to think about. One of the things that I want to, that the manager, I want to give him credit, is thinking about, and I'll let him speak to, is that I'm reminded of the case in the 90s, the late 90s, when the middle school and the public safety building were packaged together as one vote, and it did pass, fortunately, and as a result, we got a new middle school and a public safety building. I know that he has considered that idea to make sure that both of these projects pass, because that's what town meeting voted this past spring. Now, that doesn't mean that the sequence of those, we would have control over what the sequence would be. And in my opinion, as a member of this committee, I would hope the sequence would be a senior center. But I don't see, if there's a cost benefit of packaging these together, and it guarantees that they both pass, we ought to consider that. And so those are the conversations that we're having. In addition to conversations like this. So, but just Jan, if you could just clarify, because the gentleman did ask, and I know he threw out there just arbitrarily perhaps 15 years. Correct me if I'm wrong, but we're looking at something like 2 or 3. Construction.
If town meeting in early October, and I'm assuming it's early October, passes the article, I would assume that we'd be bidding this project sometime around June, which is plenty of time to do development and construction documents. Maybe July, but would be in construction the following fall.
Yeah, I would suggest it may not be early October. One of the things that, I know there's been a lot of pushback from folks over the years about the amount of free cash that the town has accumulated. And quite frankly, one of the reasons that I believe, and I've worked to try to increase the savings, is precisely for a project like this. So instead of having to pursue an override or a debt exclusion, which, as we know from the high school project, is a adds to people's tax bill by having free cash available to us. My plan would be to use good portion of that to pay down the debt that will be incurred on this project. I don't know at this point what the total project cost will be. That will be something we'll be determining going forward, but the point being that from a administration standpoint, free cash has to be certified by the Department of Revenue. It's a function that the town accountant, finance director is involved in, and we try to get that certified by the Department of Revenue as soon as possible, but I want to be able to go into a town meeting with that number so that we can draw upon that as part of the appropriation.
Mr. Chair, I have to just give this final point. The other point is that we, and on my own, I brought this up, and these two gentlemen can attest to it, because I've been emailing and calling you, and we haven't gotten to this point yet, and I'm going to be patient, I promise. But we should be looking at a second story, because in my opinion, this senior center is going to continue to grow, and we can't rule out the possibility in 5 or 10 years that we need more space for the senior center. We really need to look at if there's a cost savings for us long-term for a second story. And we haven't gotten to that point, and I know you've told me that on a number of occasions, but we need to consider that because we have to think about the cost of this long-term.
Okay.
I stand to correct you, Jeff. Jeff and Greg, okay? I'm going to read to you something.
Excuse me, what's this pertaining to?
This is pertaining to what Greg said, that there was a combined vote.
That's right.
For the public safety building and the middle school.
I'm ready to stand corrected if I'm...
Okay. There was not. And I went to the library and researched it, okay? What happened was, and I'm going to read you my notes here, at the 1997 annual town election on April 19th, 1997, in addition to the usual races that were going on, there was a question for the voters to either vote yes or no. And the question was as follows: shall the town of Wilmington be allowed to exempt from the provisions of Proposition 2.5 the sums required to be paid for the bonds issued for construction, originally equipping and furnishing a new public safety building and a new comprehensive middle school? Now that was on the ballot. The vote was yes, 2,123, no, 2,008. Not exactly a landslide. The following week, on April 26, 1997, at the annual town meeting, there were separate articles for each project. Article 16 was for the middle school, and it had a price tag of $25.6 million. It was overwhelmingly approved. Article 17 was for the public safety building, and it had a price of $6.8 million. And it too got the necessary 2/3 vote. Although the town received the authority to bond both projects and exempt them from Proposition 2.5 and thus be outside the debt limit, apparently the town did not do that. Maybe because the vote was too close, or they realized they could bond both projects within the debt limit. Further research in the annual town reports indicates the town in June 2001 bonded these 2 projects and 3 others with a 10-year bond issue that expired in 2011. So they were 2 separate articles at the annual town meeting.
My apologies, I'll stand corrected on that.
Okay.
But I think the idea is that we got to think about ways that we can save money for the taxpayers, and that's the only really point. So I appreciate your research, and thank you for bringing that up. I will stand corrected on that. But I think, again, the fact remains, we need to think about what is the most financially responsible way that we can approach this so it has the least impact on residents while achieving the goal of getting a senior center.
All right.
Can I, excuse me, I'm going to put the town manager on the spot here.
Okay.
Combining these 2 projects, Jeff, what would that entail? What would that take?
Well, so in terms of a town meeting, the article could either be devised so that both projects are within one article, or clearly they could be established so that there's an article to raise and appropriate money for a senior center, an article to raise and appropriate money for a town hall. You know, quite frankly, my preference would be to package them together, because I think, you know, that this community needs to understand it shouldn't be us versus them. And I think that the concern I have, quite frankly, is that many of the proponents or the people supportive of the senior center, if it's a standalone vote, are likely to approve a senior center and then vote no on a town school admin building. And I just think, you know, this community has gone for 40 years on a temporary town school admin building. And someone made note in a recent Apple commentary, you know, where are the folks at these meetings that are supporting a town school admin building? Well, it's a different animal, because unlike a senior center where you have a passionate group of people that go to a building for particular services, you know, this is a place where people come in when they have to pay their taxes. They go to the town clerk's office. It's not a place where people recreate typically, other than the limited programs that Karen Campbell offers. So, you know, it doesn't have the cachet, if you will, that a senior center does. So, you know, I suppose if, you know, and this certainly very well could happen, that a senior center is passed and people say, you know, we don't need a new town hall. Well, at some point, this community is going to need a new town hall, because even if you look at it from the standpoint of cost effectiveness, you know, we're spending tax dollars and sending them out the window every winter, because we've got single pane glass in these windows. Heat runs out like a sieve. Now you could argue, you know, spend $500,000 and replace the windows, but we've got a boiler system that is inadequate. I mean, I could go on and on, aside from the fact that we're at the point, from a staffing perspective, you know, there's been calls for different positions. We don't physically have the capability to add personnel that over the next 20, 30 years may be required. We don't have the capacity for document storage. Certainly a lot of that can be put online, but there are just functional limitations to this building, and clearly the same exists for the for the Roman house. So, you know, I guess you know, I understand people are passionate about a senior center. Quite frankly, I'm passionate about a senior center, but I'm also recognizing that the town has a responsibility to provide a building that is appropriate for the administration of town government.
Being fully aware of the facility and how it operates, who would be the one that would determine that these two projects get joined together? Is that something that the Board of Selectmen would have to determine?
Ultimately, the Board of Selectmen would authorize the articles, you know, as if they're put on a special town meeting. So yes, they would make the call as to whether it's going to be a joint article or whether it would be two standalone articles.
Okay.
And obviously town council, our town attorney, would be involved in preparation of that article.
Absolutely.
So that would be setting a precedent then for the town.
Yes.
Right, so, you know, to Diane, your point, and I stand corrected, it was clear, the point that I guess I've been trying to make is that, at least in terms of the ballot question, there was a desire at the time, and I was involved in some of the discussions, that, you know, there was the thought that by packaging the middle school and the public safety building together on the ballot question, both constituencies would be drawn together to vote, for both buildings. And, I guess that's the premise that I have thought would be appropriate here. I know that there are many people in town that very seldom come to the town hall and, don't really have any degree of concern about what happens here or what happens at the Roman House. But, at some point in time, one of the things oftentimes we get criticized for, and I'll reference the former Swain School, the former Whitfield School, is, allowing town buildings to continue on and on and on, and then all of a sudden the town is faced with spending big bucks to rehabilitate those buildings so that they're even functional, let alone, accommodating to the staff. And I don't want to see us be in that position, again. The Swain and the Whitfield were two examples where those buildings get to the point that they just were not habitable and they had to be torn down, and there were folks saying, well, where was the town, why wasn't the town taking action to address these? Well, now's the time. Our facilities plan was, designed with the intent of trying to forecast the buildings that were in need of addressing. The senior center clearly was one, and the town school admin, I think, was another. So, I guess I just feel that there's a responsibility that I have as the town manager to do what I can to strongly encourage folks to make sure that there's appropriate space, meeting space, working space, all of the things that need to be there for a functioning town government.
Can I just get one
And schools.
clarification? You mentioned about the bonding, and you were explaining to these people. Would you just tell us, I know you said we just got certified for our free cash. Could you tell us what that number is? And also for the capital stabilization fund?
Yes, we were just certified by the Department of Revenue with a total of $32,762,493. That's for free cash. And then our capital stabilization account, which is an account used to fund projects like this, is at $17,252,730. So, but I would put a caveat on the free cash, because one of the things we have to be mindful of is that when we do borrow, we have to go to Standard & Poor's, which is a rating agency, and they take a look at all of our finances in great detail, and we get a bond rating from the rating agencies. So the higher the bond rating, the lower the interest is that you're paying on debt. So clearly the AAA communities pay the least in the form of interest. We're at a AA plus, which is the next level down. And one of the things that we've been told on the numerous occasions that we've dealt with S&P is that they look very carefully at the amount of money we have set aside in reserve. And the recommended amount is something in the order of 15 to 20% of your operating budget be set aside for reserves. So just like in your household, you want to make sure you have some money in the bank, so if the roof caves in, you don't go bankrupt trying to address it, or more appropriately, that you address it before it caves in. In the case of the town, we need to make and the people that are going to buy these bonds, we need to make the case to them that we are a financially viable and well-funded community. And so I say that because even though that number is almost $33 million, to maintain our rating, we want to maintain something in the order of $16 or $17 million as available. And I would just again only point out about 10 years ago when the economy crashed, we had 9.4 million in free cash, and because the economy went down, our state aid was reduced, we had to dip into those funds to keep services intact, to keep from laying off teachers and firefighters and police officers and so on. So over the course of about 4 or 5 years, we went from $9.4 million in free cash down to about $3.4 million. So that's another reason why we have those funds. So, you know, it's certainly an incredible amount of money, but I just want to make the point that it's not all available to spend on capital projects. We will spend a significant amount, in my estimation or my recommendation, on reducing the debt associated with the senior center, town hall, school admin if it passes, the Wildwood School, but we're not going to be able to kind of draw that down to zero.
Jeff, thank you very much.
Thank you.
First of all, thanks for that information. I asked for a reason, but I see a lot of hands going up. If it's new information or a new question or something else, if it's not just rebuttal and over. So, in the front.
Ian Caridio, 24 Freeport Drive. A large group of seniors came here tonight with the hopes that we would, number one, finalize a site for this project to start. All I'm hearing is advocating for a municipal building, this, that, and all these other buildings, okay? The people that work in these buildings and the people that have to go to these buildings to do their daily business are not as large of a group as the seniors are, a large group in Wilmington, and they're getting larger. And you all will have your day that you will want this senior center. And I think the town hall should be put on second base, because right now the senior center is what should be focused. I've heard about it for the past 5 or 6 years, and it seems as though there's always something, this article, that article, and the senior center always ends up at the bottom. This is what I can't understand. We advocated to get a large group of people here tonight because we thought we were going to get some answers. We've heard rhetoric after rhetoric, and I appreciate everyone that gave their speeches. They explained everything very professionally, and we all appreciate it. But the fact remains, there still has not been a site. I thought we were going to leave here tonight to say, this is where it's going to be, this is what's going to happen. Now all we hear is, well, if this, next year there'll be a town vote, and this will happen in October, and this, that. By the time this thing actually gets started, half of the people that want this will be at the cemetery, and they won't need it. That's all I have to say.
Diane, can I say something, please, to Jeff, please?
Go ahead.
Sir, due respect, it's not recreation. I'm a widow, we got a lot of them. It's not recreation. Bowling and golf is recreation. You know what this senior center is to me? Therapeutic. To meet people. It's not fun. Okay, it's not games.
I don't.
Someday, you're gonna be there whether you want it or not.
I'm closer than you might think, but we're getting there every day, certainly. But I don't mean to suggest that I'm advocating for a senior center, a town school admin building at the expense of a senior center. What I'm suggesting is that it shouldn't be a competition between the two. I think we should pursue both, but I clearly understand that a senior center is needed. It's needed as soon as possible. You know, the challenge, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on your perspective, with government at any level, is that it's a deliberative process. It's not like corporate America where they can just float a bond. No, I'm just saying that the process.
Somerville. My state rep got me a new rink in Somerville. There's money. Why can't we get money from the state?
There are no grants for senior centers, but my point was that, you know, there's a deliberative process. It's slow. I understand it's frustrating, but that's part of the process that we all adhere to, right? I mean, everybody has a vote. Everybody wants to have an opinion, and so we're going through a process. I understand there's a level of frustration about the timing, but you know, this is a big project. that's going to cost a lot of money, and I think there's, whether it's the board, myself, people on this committee, want to be as sure as we can that it's servicing the will of the people and also done in a responsible manner.
I know what you're gonna do. You're gonna make a strip mall out of that thing, and you'll get your money. That's what's gonna happen.
All right, we're getting off topic here. I just want to reel this back in because we're starting to get late.
Right.
And I understand the seniors. I'm not going to take any more out there because I'm not hearing a lot of new information. All right, I think I've been more than fair to let people speak. All right, so for this committee, I'd like to move forward as we're going through. I mean, one of a lot of us here, we're just volunteers. We're also residents of this community. So we want to do what's best. And to your point, yeah, in a few years, I'm going to be there also. So
I'm already there.
she's already there. All right, we are fortunate to have the options that we're looking at. We're not just being pigeonholed into one spot. So again, that's why we're doing what we're doing here.
Appreciate it.
All right, the next item on the agenda was discussion, which we've done on these layouts. The reason I had asked Jeff that particular question is because when I first voted and I was going through here and I saw a lot of this happening, I had my envisions of what I was looking at the town hall and the senior center. And then you listen to a lot of well, if this one doesn't get voted, then we have that. And to my committee member, Mr. Malorani over here, the one that had the least issues would have been the St. Dorothy site, because it has nothing, it's raw land. But I didn't think it was the best site. I thought this site was bigger and had more room for growth. If the town hall wasn't here and we had this site and St. Dorothy's, I would be voting for this one. That's why I was asking for some of this information. So I want to kind of take a look at it now, and I'm asking the committee, one of the options that's out here is this site has two buildings on it, town hall and senior center. Is that something that we would entertain?
I make a motion that we
Permanently?
delete that from one of the options.
You're referring to a permanent senior center and a permanent town hall.
At this site.
At this site.
That was one of the options that we had in here. We've already eliminated the Swain, so that's another one off the list.
Well, then
Which-
I would second that motion to eliminate a permanent combined town hall and senior center at the Glen Road site.
All right, so everybody understands what we're talking about?
Yep.
Discussion?
Yes, good.
Just, Ms. Allen, just for clarification, are you referring to slide 16 to 21?
Because that must be the one with the two buildings on it.
Right.
So the motion is to eliminate the combined use of a town hall, school
Administration building and
senior
center.
center at Glen Road.
At Glen Road, correct.
To take that right off.
Thank you for the clarification.
All right, so I have a motion and I have a second. Any discussion before we take a vote? I take a vote. All in favor of moving that?
Aye.
Look at that. Unanimous. Thank you very much. All right.
Good progress.
Moving forward. The next one. Would we want to consider, now we're down to our two sites here. We're down to the town hall and we're down to St. Dorothy's. Would we want to take a vote, or would we ask our designers here to kind of take a look at it? Take a one more shot just to go, or are we?
George, just to be clear, so the process that we would be going through again is if this committee, whatever vote this committee makes with respect to a site, would then be referred back to the Board of Selectmen at the next, presumably the next meeting, for them to either accept or
The recommendation would go to you, Mr. Manager, and then.
Right, but I mean, ultimately, we would be going, I think the Board of Selectmen needs to weigh in as to whether they endorse
the recommendation of this committee, because the last thing I want to do is pursue a project where I don't have the backing of the Board of Selectmen.
Well, we've done it before.
Leo, just
Agreed.
point of order.
Yes.
I think we may have missed number 6 on the agenda, which was specifically one of the items that my colleagues asked for.
That's the next item that we're gonna be, once we get through here.
I
That's
stand
the
corrected.
outreach in the approval. Number 6 is the outreach.
Right, I'm sorry, I thought we were on the next steps.
Yeah.
Okay,
No, we have not moved on yet.
okay, thank you.
I have been on the building committee for several years, as well as Paul Millerani. I never recall us having to get the approval of the Board of Selectmen. You are the CEO of the town. Your Board of Selectmen are your directors.
Right.
And if you feel that the committee has done their due diligence and that the architects that we have hired and spent $1.6 million of our tax dollars to give us advice, this committee has in the past moved forward with recommendations and site selections and gone to town meetings without any presentations before the Board of Selectmen. We have made presentations to you, Mr. Town Manager, and previous town managers. And I think we're setting a precedent here, and if I'm wrong,
I'm
I'll
not
ask-
sure about that, where we're using raw town land, we'll just say like St. Dorothy's, if that's something that would have to have the approval of our Board of
but
Selectmen.
we did that with the high school.
High school was existing location though.
Yeah, but it was town land.
Yeah, and it's controlled by the school
Yeah.
department.
And they do whatever, yeah.
We had to, we had to purchase a piece of land, which I think
Yeah.
came through the selectmen.
Can you think of anything, Paul, that
No.
No? I think that and the reason I say that is because the time that this volunteer committee has put into this, along with our listening to our OPM and our architects, which we have paid well, I think we're all intelligent enough to make a recommendation that is sufficient to go to town meeting with. And there's a lot to do here. And I think the people that came out tonight are expecting us to take a vote on this tonight.
Thank you, Diane. That's why we're here.
If I could just, I don't often speak for all my colleagues, but I can tell you, having been to all the selectmen meeting, I've never heard any of the current selectmen speak against the town, senior center. I think, I would dare to even say, and I have been wrong before, clearly, that all 5 selectmen support a new senior center. And I think, and I'll speak for myself, having been to all these meetings, that's why I'm here. And I mean this in
You're the
the
messenger.
most sincere way. I'm clearly a ways off from frequenting a senior center, and I really want this for our community. I know, I talk to people every day, the value of this, of how important it is. I think it's important. My wife and I want to be here forever. We want to visit this someday. This is extremely important to me. I'm only one member of the Board of Selectmen, but again, I feel confident in speaking for the others. I believe they support it too. None of the selectmen have spoke against a senior center. And it's incumbent upon us. This is a terrific group of people. We've heard from a lot of good feedback from them and others. There's a huge contingent of people that want to use this senior center. There's a smaller group, I'll even say, Jeff, that need to use a town hall on a day-to-day basis. But the fact of the matter is 23,000 people will pay for these projects. Everybody. Whether you go to the senior center, you don't. Whether you go to the town hall and use the clerk, you don't. All of us will pay for this.
Right.
And it is our responsibility to make sure that we do this the best way possible. And I think that
absolutely.
is the concern of all 5 selectmen, to make sure that we do this right, so we have a phenomenal senior center sooner than later that we can all be proud of and that we can afford. That we're not pricing anybody out, that we get this new senior center and then all of a sudden they have to move and they can't use it. I mean, they'd always be welcome back, but the fact remains, we need to make sure we do the most. So if we have to look at things like combining projects, if we have to look at a 2-story building or a site between another, what the cost is gonna be, and that's a responsibility that I take very seriously.
Mr. Chairman, I disagree with that, because I think that these gentlemen sitting in front of us tonight, along with our OPM, are the people that we paid good money for to offer us advice. By constantly throwing out additional items to look at, I thought we had more than enough options to look at tonight. And now you're saying, maybe we need a 2-story building, maybe we need this.
Yeah, that's
So,
right.
so.
A point of personal privilege, Mr. Chair, if I may. Having mentioned that throughout, and, I've emailed, I've mentioned it all the time. Miss Allen, I have a tremendous amount of respect for you, so I will be respectful of your time here. This is a responsibility that I take extremely serious, and I will look at every detail and continue to do so, because that's what the residents deserve.
Right.
And I think that people that I talk to every day are really concerned about the cost of these projects. Let's make sure we measure twice and cut once. I will not apologize for wanting to make sure that we get this right for the seniors.
Okay.
Let me just ask then, Greg, are you saying that we should not take a vote tonight?
Well, I'm very pleased that we've taken 2 votes so far tonight, and I was
No, a
pleased to
vote
support your
on
motion.
are you stating that we should not take a vote on the site selection for the senior center?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because, and again, I'm really glad that you talked to Karen Campbell, because on item number 6, it's about the public outreach that was outlined in the description of the answers from our OPM, is that they were going to have public meetings with certain groups, i.e. youth group or other groups, and public outreach, and I know we're going to talk about that next, Mr. Chair. I think we've made tremendous progress tonight in eliminating 2. We are closer to a new senior center than we have been in 50 years.
But, Greg, let me just say that I'm listening to everything you're saying, and I can feel the frustration of these people here tonight.
I share that feeling.
Okay. And I think that what you're asking is that we delay our decision until some other issues are investigated. But how can we do that without selecting a site? Unless we take step 1, all right, which we've probably blown the budget even so far as coming to that first phase, which was site selection, okay? Because of all these issues that are being brought up by the Board of Selectmen, we are so far behind in our timetable, as they're asking here, that people aren't going to be able to live long enough to see this come about.
Well, I hope you're wrong on that.
Well, it's a fact of life. But let me, then I would then ask the chairman here tonight, I would make a motion then that we take a vote on the site selection tonight. I want to know if I can get a second to that.
I do want to ask Marco a question here. I will go back to your thing. Okay. Marco, one of the questions that I have, and we've been ranking these things, we saw it through, and a statement was made, for the town hall site, with the existing town hall here, was one of the reasons that it came in below St. Dorothy's was because of the building being here in the location and the chance that it may be voted against?
Yes.
So that was the reason, or one of the main reasons, that it wasn't ranked number one.
That is correct.
Okay, that was just a simple question. So, which leads me back to my other thing. Did you have a question for me?
No, thank you.
All right. So, are you making a motion that we take a vote tonight?
I am. I am going to make a motion. I would like to make a motion for this committee that we take a vote based on the options that have been presented to us tonight, of which we have eliminated 2, and that we go around the table, and I would make a motion that we select the St. Dorothy site for the senior center building.
Do I have a second? Second by Terry Marcio. So the vote here would be vote in favor of using St. Dorothy over, since the only other site we have left is the town hall.
Discussion.
Discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to be clear from the petitioner of the motion. If this motion was to pass, I just want to be clear so that we can give the folks reasonable expectations. And I guess this question should be posed to the OPM and the architect. If such motion that's been offered was to pass, would it still be unlikely that you could have the article ready for this April 30th? Or would it still be on track for a later date? Because I just want to make sure that folks are making sure they're making a reasonable decision here.
There is, at this point in time, there is no physical way we can be ready for April 30th because we won't have time.
So even if we vote tonight?
We won't have time to have developed it. We won't have time to have estimated it and have numbers ready for the finance committee in due course. We will not make April. It's impossible for us to make April.
And I too am frustrated by that, but I want to make sure we are being transparent about everything here, that even if we vote for this tonight, we still will not be on track for April 30th town meeting.
Correct.
That it would still need time. So my point is, and the reason that I won't vote for this is because I want to have a senior center, I want to have it done right, and I want it to be cost-effective for residents, that if we can't make April 30th, then why shouldn't we get this 100% right for the fall, which would guarantee that this thing will pass?
What is 100% right?
I think that it gets unanimous support from everyone. I think it's very close to getting unanimous support from the Board of Selectmen. And again, I don't want to speak for them, I only speak for myself. But the questions that we've asked have almost all been answered with the exception of item number 6, which I think is very close, and you're going to detail that to us in a minute. But we need to make sure that we get this right. We haven't even seen the cost comparison of a 1-story versus a 2-story. We haven't seen a cost comparison for the well, and I know these things may not be popular, and I totally can appreciate that the passion that's coming from the audience. I share their frustration, but it is incumbent upon me. That's
absolutely. That's during construction. That's when we start figuring construction costs.
If I may.
Go ahead.
Am I allowed to speak during discussion?
Go ahead. You can speak. You're our OPM.
I think we're all dancing around the real issue, and the real issue is the only place we can go is St. Dorothy's if the town hall doesn't pass, and if the town hall passes, then you have an option of St. Dorothy's or Glen Road, and no one on this in this room other than you and 4 other people can make that determination as to whether the 2 projects are linked together. I think the town manager is making that recommendation to you. I think it would be wise to pause your vote until after the next Board of Selectmen's meeting, and I think we should get direction from the Board of Selectmen on how we're going to move forward in October.
So in your professional opinion,
that may give this board an alternate option, and they may not choose it, but at least it gives them that option. Right now, when we started down this path, in fairness to everybody, the town hall was behind and was scheduled always to be voted in the fall, and our goal was to try and get this project done in the spring. That was the goal. All right? They were always separated by time. They were procured separate. Everything was separated by time. If they're going to merge together, which there is time to do for October, now that all the parts and pieces are in place, That needs to be known so that the two committees can merge to the proper sites that they're going to, but we need to get that going.
So as a paid professional, it's your opinion that we should not vote for this tonight?
Not if the option of linking them both together is going to happen. I do not think it would be wise to choose one site over the other, because I like the chairman. I believe that Glen Road, long-term, is a better site for future growth of this, and 265 parking spaces.
How about our...
You're not gonna have enough parking spaces on the other two
We've
options.
got it down to 2 sites.
We get our architect's professional opinion, we just heard from the OPM.
We can, he's our designer.
Do you have a professional opinion on the site location? I will put you on the spot, but...
I think that the issue of parking, Dan, that you just said, we intentionally only put 165 on that site. We could get more, so if parking is an issue, I don't think that that's a problem. I do believe that this site is larger, but has potentially two encumbrances, the sports fields, and then potentially, I'm not sure what's happening with the town hall.
I'm assuming that, this site for me is only viable assuming the town hall has passed.
Right.
If it hasn't passed, the site is not viable. You can vote all you want, it's not viable.
So I think internally, I think we've developed a preference for one of the sites, and within the sites, one of the options. Do you want me to say? I mean, it's up on the screen. It's the St. Dorothy option C.
Thank you.
But they're
So even your professionals are split.
Can I,
Go ahead, Terry.
so I understand what everyone's saying, and I understand that the people are a bit torn as to which property, depending upon the situation. Is there potentially a way, is the concern that if there is a decision that the selectmen aren't able to review it, is that the concern as part of the selectmen, that they can't have a kind of review that decision as to say this just in turn, this committee selects St. Dorothy, and then do you see it in our best interest as a group to go back to the selectmen as we did before, or are you saying that you think it's just too early to decide? I'm just a little confused, that's why I'm asking.
Thank you for the question. I think that information like we've seen tonight, discussion that we've heard, information, professional opinions that we've heard are all very useful to the selectmen. I think those answer questions that they've asked, and again, I won't speak for all of them, but I think a lot of these things address the questions that we asked. This closer examination really helps. I think the fact that this committee was unanimous in taking the Whitfield off is helpful. I think that we were unanimous in taking 2 other options off tonight, in the Swain Green and then the combination. Those recommendations are extremely helpful. We didn't have this and this discussion and these votes the last time the selectmen made, and me as a selectman, this is extremely helpful for me.
So can I ask one step further? So in your opinion, what holds you back, and what's your recommendation?
I think I'd like to see, as Mr. John here mentioned, further examination of both sites so that we can have all the I's dotted and T's crossed, and so there's nothing else to look at when it comes to the time for them to make a decision.
Well, I don't know what further examination means for the purpose of selecting a site, Greg. So you're gonna have to be a little more clear so that the design team knows which direction to go in. I do want to say one thing about traffic, though. We did, at the request of the Board of Selectmen, start on the traffic, and it's 6 weeks out. But one of the reasons I'm swayed to Glen Road is traffic, because the town controls Glen Road, and any solution can be done by the town. And the town does not control the other 2 streets, the St. Dorothy Street or the Swain Street. So those require DOT. I had said that earlier, but I don't know that it sunk in a little bit. But that's gonna be key to taking a left out of both of those sites.
And I guess by further examination, I mean the recommendations of both the police and fire chief on the safety side, the traffic study, which you indicated is 6 weeks out. We should have a final say on that. Again, this is the site. a senior center is my priority as well. That's why I'm a proud member of this committee, just like all of you folks.
I think that the fire chief and police chief have already said they won't comment until we
What
get
do
to
you
the
want?
design phase.
Right.
So I think that's a non-starter, if we're gonna hang our hat on that.
Okay.
I think this committee's charged with doing something here, and I think the selectmen have their own mission. You know, I think we need to recommend a site, and I think that it's up to the selectmen to figure out how to get it to town meeting.
Okay,
And if you guys are gonna link the projects, or the town manager wants to link the projects, that's fine, it's within your purview. There's nothing that we can do here tonight that's gonna prevent you from doing that.
And may I add one more thing, Paul? Everything you said is absolutely correct. You know, we have to start with step one, and step one is the site. Nobody knows if it's actually gonna really work. We are in conceptual design right now. We have a backup if it doesn't work. But we have to get going to cross off the site, because the site is the first step. And let me make an analogy to you, okay? You've saved enough money to buy your first home. You're looking at property, okay? You've seen a couple of pieces of property that you like. You don't know if the home is going to be able to be built there. You're going to hire an architect and an engineer, and they are going to do the investigating for you. They are going to say, you have two sites here on the table to choose from, A and B. I'll tell you what my opinion is from the architect's standpoint, the size of the house that you want and what you want. I would recommend A, okay? You say, but I really like B. I really like B. Tell me why I don't want to go to B. He's going to give you a list of justifications. You're going to think about it and everything. If you're wise enough, you're going to take your architect's recommendation. That's what you paid him for. You paid him for expert advice. That's the way I feel sitting in this position tonight. I feel that Marco and his firm have done due diligence, okay? I don't think that Dan in any way is saying that they haven't done due diligence, okay? So, in fact, they've even gone beyond. We did all the options, and you agreed with that. So the next step is obvious. Let's start with step one, which is to vote on the site selection and see if we can meet all the options that have to be done. And then what you're saying is the outreach program, the follow-up to it, and whatever else has to be done follows along. But if you don't start with step one in voting the site, you're going to be thinking too many things over and over and over again, and we'll never reach that point. And all we do is, we may even exceed the budget for what the hours were planned for to pay these gentlemen, okay? And because they've budgeted hours the same way everybody else budgets hours. And we have far exceeded even the site selection, I'll bet, at this point. So, therefore, that's why I am making this recommendation tonight. I respect everything that you say, but I have seen too many building projects, and I feel that this committee has had enough time and enough options. I have even walked the site of St. Dorothy's, okay? I have walked it to see, are they really telling us that there's no wetlands there? Do I really want to just believe them? The same way the town manager told me, you know, a few weeks ago that, you know, when the other safety building and middle school were combined, I did my homework. And I did my homework even though these gentlemen said all these things. I took it upon myself to do my own homework. I feel very comfortable for the town at this point in time in making this recommendation. I really, really do. And if I didn't, I would never be making this recommendation right now. I have lived in this town 55 years, and my children have gone through this school system, and I am very proud of what this town has accomplished. And I look out at all of the people here that have helped to make it a part of it. And I hope you enjoy this building, okay? I really, really do. I look forward to that. And I think the day you walk in it, even though you may not agree with everything we say here, you will be happy with our decision. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Jeff?
Or just to speak to the issue of the process for approval, I can't speak to what my predecessor did in terms of communication with the Board of Selectmen back when the town school, the public safety middle school was constructed. You know, I don't know specifically what communications took place at that point, but I have to believe, whether it was Mike Kyra or Buzz Stepchinsky before him when they were talking about building projects, that they at least consulted with the Board of Selectmen. I mean, the board is the representative, they in fact legally are the CEOs of the town. I'm the chief administrative officer, but they are the CEOs of the town. So, you know, I believe it would be inappropriate for me to simply take the recommendation of this committee and run with it without bringing it back to the board. I just, and like I say, I don't know what the prior managers have done, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was some level of communication between the prior managers and the Board of Selectmen before the town manager went forward with those other building projects.
I have no issue with that.
I mean, as a practical matter, in terms of a vote tonight, I personally don't feel I don't feel that there's a problem in voting tonight. I'm certainly prepared to cast my vote, so to speak, and go from there. I think certainly I respect and understand what Selectman Bendel is saying in terms of some of the options, but for example, the issue of whether it's one floor or 2 floors, I think is a decision that can be addressed at a later point down the road. You know, for tonight's purposes, I think we need to reach a consensus on where the site, where the building's going to be sited, and then these folks can be let loose to design the building, and we'll be having a lot of discussions about that.
I would agree with that, Jeff. Thank you.
Okay.
Any
Any further?
Any more discussion?
Yeah, any further discussion? All right, so we have a motion. So your motion, the way it's is to have the St. Dorothy site, which would eliminate the town hall from being considered for the senior
Glen
center.
Road site, you mean? The
Yeah.
Glen Road site, yeah, being considered. Yes, I am making the recommendation that we vote for the St. Dorothy site for the senior citizen building as the site selection, as as also presented and discussed with our architect. His recommendation.
Just, which option, A, B, or C?
No, I don't think we're doing that. I think we're just
Yeah,
looking at
there's
the
no
site.
option with it.
I don't think
That's another argument.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. No,
Thanks, Teresa.
Yeah, we'll work on that one.
Okay.
We'll work on that. We'll
All
work
right.
on that. I think we have work to do.
We have a second,
Right.
so I would take a vote. All in favor of St. Dorothy site for the senior center?
Mhm.
Signify by raising your hand. All right. So it's 4-3. All against?
4-2.
4-3.
So, isn't there 8?
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. Because, all due respect, Jeff, but I didn't know that the town manager voted on it. Committee.
On the committee?
Okay. I don't know.
I thought it was
I'm-
ex officio. I didn't think that he voted on these recommendations.
Okay.
I don't know, I'm asking the question.
Yeah, I don't know, from a legal standpoint, I guess my understanding is I'm a part of the committee,
always consider it,
just as anybody else would, but, I mean, either way, it sounds like the vote is the vote, so.
Right. So,
5-3.
It's 4-2, I guess, if I'm
4 to
not
2.
included.
Diane's a yes, Jack's a yes, Paul's a yes, Teresa's a yes, Terry's a yes, that's 5.
Okay.
George is a no,
that was a no.
and Greg's a no.
Right.
So it's 5-2 with Jeff being
Vote passes.
Well, if, yeah, if,
an ex officio,
I
what,
guess an
no.
ex officio, no, but, yeah.
All right. So,
Possible no.
yes, please.
Since we started this journey, I
possible
always
no?
felt this site was the best place for a senior.
That's what I feel too.
I feel it's a good fit for what's already existing here.
But having sat in at so many of these meetings over time, I've come to realize what we all realized, I think, when we voted unanimously, is that this site is very, very complicated. And we have another site that is not complicated at all. And I think in just a desire to streamline the process and feel that we will still get exactly what we want, I've come to believe that St. Dorothy's is the better of the two options at this time. And I feel bad because I still feel emotionally like this is a good site. It's just too many things.
I have to agree
deal
with you on it, and being part of the other committee too, and knowing where the, we're going to be pushing for that, and voting on that also, it kind of vacates this. And then if the town hall does leave and the senior center's over there and we have this piece of property, we'll be discussing something else at that time. So, the vote was in favor, so it passes as far as the St. Dorothy site.
Chairman, just to make sure that, so that Jeff is going to town manager.
I will write a recommendation to the town manager from this committee,
And then four goes to the select.
and then he will discuss it with the select.
I've been here before.
Thank you.
I know, it's true.
All right, so we get to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is our OPM discussion on the public outreach and the newsletters and everything he's put together.
Thank you.
Excuse me. Does this pertain to the public outreach?
No, it pertains to that question, it's still open.
What question's still open?
Question, I'm looking for the next step is, you're gonna take it to the board and you're gonna find out if they concur with whatever.
That's not decided by this committee.
Well, yeah, so just for informational purposes, my plan would be, the recommendation is clear that it's the St. Dorothy's site, so I would plan to bring that to the Board of Selectmen as a board to consider at their meeting on December 13th, which is their next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead, Dan.
I'm up.
You're up.
So, when we met with the Board of Selectmen, what became apparently clear was the OPM was lagging a little behind on public outreach.
Yep.
And the OPM has caught up on public outreach, but we hadn't had a meeting since the Selectmen's meeting. So, since the Selectmen's meeting, we've produced.
Chair.
Hey, excuse me, please, quiet on the way out, please.
Since the Selectmen's meeting, we have produced 4 newsletters. We just haven't posted them. We're waiting for this meeting just to say, go ahead, you're okay with it. And we've also got a web page up that has all the videos of the
site, and of all of our meetings that have been taped. And Terry and I are in constant contact, and she's going to be providing me some PDFs of some of the missing minutes that I have, so that all the meeting minutes will be on the site, so there'll be complete transparency there. We also, if you'd like, we have a subscription to Constant Contact, which is a free service for all of you if you want it. Residents can sign up their email, and as a newsletter comes out, because I'm going to produce number 5 probably tomorrow or probably the weekend, which will summarize the selection of the site. Number 5 will go up on the web, but we'll provide Constant Contact, so instead of people going in through the website and all that, they can get them emailed directly to their box also. So if you want me to do that, I'll be happy to do that also. We also have a Facebook page that is ready to go. The link's at the bottom of the web page. There's nothing on the Facebook page as of right now. We told Megan to populate the Facebook page and turn on the web page at 10 o'clock tonight, unless you guys tell me not to. So, but the content's all there. It's ready to go. George and I have been talking about that. Yeah, that's the website. George and I have been talking about also doing some public infomercials, I guess you'd call them, on your local cable access station. So we can start doing those also too. So we had expected to do our first one right before sad events occurred. So hope you'll indulge that we're a little behind on those, but we're going to catch up.
Is it too early to have a board, say, at the library or at the town hall entrance here of the St. Dorothy site? I know there's 3 options there that we're looking at. Would that be too confusing right now?
I think it'd be too confusing to put a site up at this point in time. I don't think it would be too confusing after maybe 2 more meetings to put up the building design, because it'll start looking like a building.
What we were looking for tonight is approval of these newsletters so we can get them out, get them going.
Yeah, I mean,
and then
the whole concept
get the
of
website up and
where the
running.
selectmen wanted us to go, we believe it or not, we would have got there right about now to where we are.
Yeah.
We just were lagging a little behind, and I apologize for that. It's just, normally we don't start producing newsletters till we have content to produce. This town is a little different. You guys are really engaged at all levels, at all boards, which is a great thing for civics. So you'll now be able to get everything you want to get. All right?
And can I ask you, is this the,
Website?
Yes.
https p3.com/projects Wilmington.
Right here.
Okay.
Yeah, at the bottom of the page.
Thank you.
And that goes on to our server, which is fine. If you want us to link it to your server, we can do that. Megan can shift everything over, however you want to do it. We just want to get the information out there. At this point, we're just trying to get the information out.
And is that the point that
This is, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, is that the point we would sign up for Constant Contact?
No, in the
You'll
fifth
do
one,
that?
in the 5th newsletter, I'll send out the Constant Contact information.
Okay, thank you.
All right?
Dan, Mr. Chair.
Good.
Thank you. Dan, thanks very much for this. Do you have an idea what the timeline for the newsletters are?
My goal is to get one out after every meeting. So.
A total of 5?
So we have 4 here today. After today's meeting, we'll produce what happened today. We'll have the presentation on the presentation. All the presentations that have been presented by the designers have their own links, and then we'll have a summary 1 page. We're trying to make the summaries short and 1 page.
Good.
Because when they're more than 1 page, they don't read them.
Yep.
So, I mean, it's pretty obvious what we did here tonight. So we can summarize that up, and out the door it'll go.
Thank you. So just one of these after
Yep.
every meeting. Okay, thank you.
Good.
I was wondering, Jeff, is it okay that we use that this link, your webpage link, for seniors to, so if it's on our website and on our.
Yeah, you can link
be
to our,
able
you can link to our
Facebook?
page. Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
So we can connect
Yep,
and just have it
absolutely.
automatic.
That's why we produced it.
Right.
Just
And
making sure.
and everything that was on here, you were able to link through and connect through and had a
I
lot
don't
of
want Greg
information.
going in there and giving us a virus or something, but other than that.
No. Hey, I'm 2 out of 3 with votes tonight. That's pretty good.
You're doing pretty good. But I do believe, with the exception of one item, and that one item was, there was a request by the Board of Selectmen to do a site visit to all the sites. And we would have probably done that a month ago, but again, events have occurred. If you still think that that's necessary, we'll do it. I think that all of the decision makers, at least in town, know the sites by heart. But if you want us to do that, that's the one item out of all the items that came up at the selectmen's meeting that hasn't been done. Everything else, I believe, has been covered. Selectmen wanted P3 to go to all the sites, or this committee to go to all the sites?
Just to offer a walkthrough for the selectmen.
I'll take you up on that. I don't want to speak for myself, but I will maybe talk to you offline and.
Yep, you and I can connect on it, all right?
And that'd be offered to
Right.
us as well?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
So do I have approval on these newsletters?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you. Next steps in the process. Dan?
So, the next steps in the process, we'll start looking at further developing St. Dorothy's. You know, we'll get the surveyors to complete their work. And as soon as the surveyors complete their work and the site engineer and the architect have given you a location for the building that is acceptable to everybody, and you voted the location of the building, we will then do a geotechnical investigation for the footings and things of that nature.
So I would just look to have this discussion with the Board of Selectmen on the 13th. I don't know, what the board, what their response is going to be, but, I guess if the board is in favor of this recommendation, then clearly, I'll go ahead. If the board is opposed to this site and is of the opinion that the town hall site should be the preferred site, or perhaps even another site that, I don't know if the town green site would be in the mix. I suspect not, but I just, like I said earlier, I think it's going to be challenging to go forward with any of these sites. Obviously, we need the voters to approve, but I think it's going to be just another challenge if I don't have the Board of Selectmen endorsing the site. So I just say that because I don't want to go too far down the line here in terms of the work before the 13th. I understand that's a couple of weeks out and time is of the essence, but the worst case scenario for me, quite frankly, would be for the efforts to go ahead right over the next 2 weeks, and then for the Board of Selectmen to tell me we don't believe that this is the best site, we ought to reconsider.
Just procedurally, does the Board of Selectmen have the authority to set aside our recommendation tonight and then do whatever they want?
From a legal perspective, I guess that the long and the short of it is ultimately the Board of Selectmen will set the agenda, the warrant article. So, that's where the board has the say. But as a practical matter, I mean, you have essentially the leaders of the community, right? The 5 representatives who are the elected leaders of the community. I just think it would be incredibly problematic to go forward with a recommendation that a majority of the elected leaders of the community are not supportive of.
I think it's more problematic that they wouldn't endorse this committee's recommendation.
I mean, I'm not saying they won't, I'm just saying I don't want to pull the trigger tonight or
I
tomorrow.
also believe, because it's property in the town, the selectmen are the ones that release it for use, so I believe so.
I'm just trying to. Regardless of how that all plays out, that's politics, and I'm assuming it gets played out in the next couple of weeks, hopefully.
Well, Dan, I'm sorry, I take a step, it's not politics. I mean, the 5 of us represent the entire community. Each of us hears from people on a daily basis, in which we then take that feedback and develop a decision based on what's presented. I mean, I don't want to assume anything from anybody. We do still have to be on the agenda and have the discussion, and if a vote comes about, we'll see how the vote goes. But I wouldn't assume anything, and quite frankly,
politics might have been a bad word, but I guess what I'm trying to say is it's a different political branch that's weighing in that's outside of us. All right, so I didn't mean it the way it sounded, and I apologize to the.
No apology needed, but I think that we can agree it's a different perspective, perhaps.
Right. So, and I understand that, having sat in your shoes for 6 years, I clearly understand what you're going through. But we need to set a definitive schedule.
Right.
After the holiday, of all of us committing to every other week to get this project done, or we're not gonna make it. And that goes for the same with the other project. And, we really should set aside every single Wednesday, first and third for, school admin, because I think they meet second and fourth.
Right.
And then second and fourth for this committee. We really need to keep moving, and it, it's not fair to design as.
Wednesdays.
It's been dragged out.
That is one of the items on the agenda.
apologize.
We can skip over, want to come back to it, but I would like to have discussion on our future meetings. Go ahead, Terry.
I just want to, I'm just kind of a little bit of loss that if this is going to be asked in front of the selectmen for their next meeting, which will be December 13th.
Yeah.
Is it important for us to be able to, what if they have questions? Say for example, is someone from the committee should be there, or is the OPM going to be there, or is the architect? Like, if they have questions and then the questions aren't answered at that time, it's going to stall it a little bit. Should we plan for someone to be at that meeting in case, obviously, there's going to be questions?
Right.
If we should be prepared for that, so that there's not a further delay in that.
It's unfortunate that they didn't come to this, all of them come to this meeting.
I just don't know what the procedure is. I just don't know
Well,
if there would be questions.
I mean, Greg, you will make them aware, of course, what's going on, and by that time, we'll have the recommendation.
Yeah.
And at that point, they can ask for us to come in for the next meeting.
I wouldn't want to step on the toes of the chair.
Yeah, I certainly would want to have a discussion with Chair Maselli about about this. I'm suggesting that this be taken up on the 13th of December. Obviously the chair sets the agenda. So that would be my recommendation, that this be considered on the 13th. As to whether it would be advisable to have the architect and the OPM there.
That may be the following meeting. That would have to be discussed.
Well, from a belt and suspenders standpoint, I'd rather have them there and to be able to address any questions that come up on the 13th, as opposed to then putting it off until January 10th.
So you need to discuss that with the chair first.
Right. I mean, I guess are you available that night if it turns out that that this is an item on the docket?
I will make myself available if need be. I'm sure Marco will too. I mean, our goal is to come to a conclusion.
Right.
If I remember correctly, the board wanted a presentation.
We won't go in there like we did last time. We won't go in there.
No criticism, I just wanted,
No,
I was
the
just thinking.
criticism's well deserved.
No, none intended. I was just thinking maybe we could use
No, they
this
have to make the
presentation, but not put in the notes.
So, we're gonna take the select
No
note for every
offense.
note, no. I think that, I think you need to let, I think you need to let the architect and the OPM and the chairman.
Oh, of course.
Put together something, you know, we try to make every meeting here as productive as possible. We do meet prior to the meetings to make sure that we've crossed all the, items from the previous meeting, so I'm quite certain that we can get something put together that will be, adequate for the Board of Selectmen.
I'm sure. Thank you.
And just as an aside, I'd like to ask the town manager here that the seniors will probably be at that meeting. I mean, you know, the selectmen represent the people of this town. And I'm sure that they will be coming to that meeting as well. And voice their concerns to move forward with it. So I'm just gonna throw that out there, having sat in the same similar seat. Sometimes you have to put your independent or your personal feelings aside and think of the people that you're representing and what their thoughts, what their feelings are. So just to put that out there.
All right. So do we want to discuss our meeting nights? Does Wednesdays work for people?
Mhm.
Wednesdays
Yep,
work great
Wednesdays
for us.
Do we want to get, Dan, my thought, since we're going to probably be out on the 13th, are we going to have a meeting in December? I know we're getting close to the holidays.
I think we should, I honestly think we should,
Are we going to have new information?
yeah, I think we should schedule a meeting for Wednesday, the
15th?
15th, I do.
Mhm.
All right, even if it's to review some small items that we can knock out of the way, that'll clear the way for the next meeting,
All right.
right? I don't know whether Marco will be there or not, but
Sure.
I have surveying and geotech stuff that has to be looked at by the committee.
All right.
All right?
So the Wednesdays work. We're going to alternate because I have to check the school committee. They also meet on Wednesdays.
I mean, we should be the week that they meet,
Right.
and then
Right,
our
George.
next meeting should be the.
Do you know their schedule, Jeff?
I don't offhand. I thought that they were the Wednesday following the selectmen's meeting, but I could be wrong.
They do, right.
Yeah, so the Board of Selectmen is meeting on the 13th, which is the second Monday, so then the school committee would be on the 15th.
All right, so we would want to meet on the 15th at the Senior Center and then do every other. The 29th, during school vacation, are people going to be available for another meeting? Start doing those 29th?
I'll be skiing in Europe. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
All right, so we'll start doing every other from the 15th.
Yep.
Okay.
6 p.m.?
6 p.m. here.
June 15th and the 29th?
Yes.
Every other week.
Every other week.
And then on the off Wednesdays.
Then it'll be the 12th, the 26th of January.
Yeah, so we'll send out, I think we should send out a reminder just with all the dates.
Yeah, I'll get it out there. I got to check with the, make sure the conference room is available and,
Check with WCTV and make sure that they're.
yeah, put it out there.
Yep.
Kevin?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just to bring up something that could be problematic as that word was used a little bit tonight. We do have another building committee
Right.
for the town hall and school administration.
Right.
And they're looking at the same locations. So there's nothing that would prevent them from also choosing the St. Dorothy's site. Even though you're making a recommendation, those sites are still on the table for the other committee. So I
Correct.
think you're putting the cart before the horse and moving forward without getting their recommendation as well. So I know that there are a few people that serve on both committees, but
Correct.
there are a few people that don't. So just to assume that this is a done deal for this site may not. What if they choose the same site? I mean, shouldn't you wait before you start putting this out and meeting this on the 13th for a presentation and putting out social media?
I'll be discussing with the OPM as far as our next meeting with the town hall school admin too, so.
No, I think
I'm just throwing that out. It's not to say that it's, you know, they may pick another site. I'm just saying that, but
Absolutely.
they also may pick the same site,
They
in
could.
which case you're already saying that it's gonna happen. So, just
Okay, all right.
throwing that out there.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, to that point, and I certainly don't want to belabor it, but I guess you know, if it is, and again, obviously I can't speak for the board, but given that the other committee has not met in some time and has not arrived at a site recommendation, I don't know, it's a good point, I suppose, if the board, if we meet with the board on the 13th, or if I propose that this be an agenda item for the 13th of December, and clearly at that point, I don't envision that the town school admin committee, building committee will have a site recommendation at that point. Will members of the board be inclined to want to defer until that group comes back with their recommendation, or will they, you know, be amenable to accepting the recommendation, which essentially then takes that site off of the docket for the town school admin building? Right, I mean, that's clearly an issue.
But Jeff, in the matrix, that site was, you know, that was pretty much decided, even in the matrix. And, you know, everybody was there at that meeting that voted in favor of it. So, you know, I don't think I'm gonna change my mind. But I think that, you know, in all fairness to the architects that we have and the OPM, I think it is advisable to say that property is off the table, is selected for the senior center. And the other options are the existing town hall site,
Well,
the
it will have to be voted on.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
will be
so
voted on.
to assume that, but we have to vote on
And you
that.
can't deliberate
Right,
Right.
on the other,
not yet.
you're not in session, you don't have.
Right, you can't do that.
Do we have a meeting with the other committee before the 13th? Just to try this out.
Good idea, Paul.
Yeah, I can discuss that with the OPM. I know Phil and we've been talking about it if we're ready.
I'll see what I can do, I'll see what I can do with Dietz first thing in the morning, and George and I will talk about
I
it.
believe the Board of Selectmen have a meeting next Wednesday, an executive session. I believe that's what the chair's called for, so.
Okay.
Just to be clear, so it would be Monday, every other Wednesday from now until next fall.
From the 15th on,
I don't know if it'll be, I don't know if it'll be every
No, I'm-
single
I'm-
one.
no, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be-
I don't know if it'll be everyone, Greg.
But there's certainly gonna be a lot of them, as the plans are being developed, and, you know, there's just a lot of
And-
back and forth that may have to go, and
And there'll be shorter
one
meetings.
of them might be public forum,
That's
one of them might be, you know, results in the public forum, you know, things like that nature. I think it would be safe to just to understand that we have a lot of work to do. That's really all I wanted to get across. I do think there'll be some Wednesdays we get off.
Gotta schedule some babysitters, thank you, Dan.
Can you do something the week of the 6th?
Put it in for a voucher.
Can I
We
do
used to
that?
say, ask like a visit. I put in a babysitting for a voucher.
Anyways.
So the town administrator-
We volunteer here, Dan.
I know. So didn't we.
So we'll hear about that joint, questioning the joint meeting then?
No, we're in December.
I'm not
We're in
here.
December.
The
You're
what-
in
the
January.
word- So actually, the joint meeting will
This
be
is for the
before
town
the
hall.
15th.
Yeah, before we
We're
meet
kind
the
of questioning
15th.
about a joint meeting
Not sure
between
what I
the
got
committees
something. I know
before.
I got
I
something.
don't know about joint meeting.
Not
joint, just
Maybe
just
the
a
town hall.
town hall hasn't met.
School administration building meeting could have a meeting before the 13th.
But just for this one, just
And then maybe that committee could make a recommendation.
No,
I wouldn't-
not a joint.
Let me reach
I
out.
wouldn't
to-
presume to.
I misunderstood, thank you.
That way there, everything is clear cut for the selectmen's meeting.
Yeah.
on the 13th.
So if we can meet, Paul, right? And
What's that?
You're suggesting if we could meet before the 13th.
I'll be
for the
discussing
town-
at the OPM, and I'll
Yeah.
reach out to
Town hall school.
Yeah,
Yeah.
town hall?
Yeah.
We'll reach out and I'll see who's available for what.
Doesn't have to be a long agenda.
No, not at all.
I've got a $62 million school vote for city council. I don't know what
All right, public comment.
That's my.
I think we had a lot of that tonight. All good?
It's not, unlike it was.
I've recently read the economic development report. I'm not sure the exact title of it, Jeff. The one that was paid for out of COVID funds.
COVID funds. We did have, there was a report, done by, there was a firm, yes, I don't remember the title offhand, but it was done through, yes, the local Ready Recovery Fund, yes.
Right. And that talked about a number of things that we need to do to improve the economic development opportunities in town. And one of them was to identify a town center, which of course we've been trying to do since I lived here, which is 35 years now. But I think that by putting the town hall at the Swain site, therefore we do identify a town center. Quite simply. So that's an independent third-party group looking at the town from outside. and saying-
That's a different committee.
No, I know, but I'm saying the recommendation
Absolutely.
goes along with placing the town hall at the Swain site.
Anybody else? I'll entertain one last motion.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Can I second that?
Thank you very much, everybody. It was a long